Hello, and thanks for tuning in. The Unidentified Celebrity Review is just minutes away. I'm Rather Be Squidden, and I'll be pushing some buttons behind the scenes during the show, but I'm here now to ease you into an incredible couple of hours. Thanks to Das Tape for setting the mood. I'm feeling it. I was listening to them on Spotify during high noon yesterday. My excitement today is palpable. We have the tip of the spear of disclosure, Lue Elizondo, in the studio. He's there with your hosts, Louise and Michael. They're putting the final thoughts into their questions for the man who has more answers than most. You'll get your shot too. The last 10 minutes or so of the first hour will be dedicated to your questions. So send them over in the live chat. I'll be taking notes and we'll be displaying them at the end. Not gonna lie, those super chats, they do stand out. And if you're a Patreon member, which is a great way to support the show, put that in the comment as well, and I'll be sure to bump you up as well, at least as best as I can. And please don't think you need to be a Patreon or a super chatter to get your voice heard. I'll be reading every question, and I'll try to get as many answered as I can. I can hardly wait. Disclosure means many things to different people. And for me, disclosure really started with the 2017 New York Times article breaking the initial reporting on Elizondo's story and the existence of objects that are unidentifiable by the world's most advanced military. Before that moment, I was interested in UFOs and aliens, sure, but I'd read the reports and immediately hop over to the nearest debunking theory and leave the issue smugly confident in my own worldview. After seeing those videos and hearing that firsthand testimony, my childlike wonder of the world returned. And I think the world is seeing something similar to Roger Bannister running a mile in under 4 minutes. This was long thought to be an impossible feat. He showed the world it was possible in 1954. Since then, 1,400 athletes have followed his lead. Now that we know these things are possible, regardless of their origin, it's only a matter of time before we figure it out. And while I doubt that I will figure it out, my mind is now open. And, to my surprise, I found a lot of interesting threads to pull. Most recently, time crystals. This new state of matter is incredibly bizarre and maybe not in the ways you'd expect. I'll be posting my take on that matter on my channel, Rather Be Squidding, this weekend. So be sure to search for Rather Be Squidding and subscribe there. But stay here now. I see we got 170 of you, so thank you. And start thinking of your questions and get ready for some knowledge. I see we got 175 now. You're coming in fast. We got all our favorites. We got Steve Pratt, The Final Countdown, indeed. Now I Become Death. I love this. You're not going to get that here. You're going to get some good stuff here with our own friend of the show, Carl Vibe. I totally agree. This will be total fire. And I think it's about time for me to join you all in the live chat. By now, you're likely used to spending some time with these amazing gentlemen. If you're not, hit that subscribe button and ring that bell. Your hosts of the Unidentified Celebrity Review, Louise Jimenez and Michael Mataluni.
Thank you very much, Rather, for that wonderful introduction. Hello, good morning, good evening, good day, good afternoon, and aloha. Welcome back to another episode of the Unidentified Celebrity Review, your home for credible news, reviews, and commentary on everything UAPs and UFOs. My name's Luis Jimenez, my co-host Michael Mataluni. Hello, how are you today, sir?
I'm fantastic. I'm on fire, excited.
On fire! totally excited for this show. Before we get started, of course, I want to remind everybody to please like the channel, subscribe to the channel, share the channel. This is going to be a very fun interview. We do interviews like this all the time. We do live streams 5 days a week. Pretty fun channel. So come aboard. Let's get weird. Let's get started. Michael.
Absolutely. I'm super stoked. So for those of you who don't know, Lue Elizondo is here with us today. Lue is the former director of the Advanced Aerospace Threat Identification Program, ATIP, the secretive Pentagon unit that studied UFOs. As a senior counterintelligence officer for the Department of Defense, he operated through Afghanistan, the Middle East, and Latin America. He's a trained special agent who has led countless tactical and strategic missions, both during wartime and during times of peace. The one, the only, Lue Elizondo. Welcome.
Thank you, guys. Luis, ¿cómo está mi amigo, mi hermano cubano? Encantado. And,
good day, sir. ¿Cómo estás?
Gents, I'm doing great. How are you guys doing? Michael, how are you?
I'm doing fantastic, Lou, and it's great to have you. And we've just got so many people who are here who are excited to hear you. You know, you spend so much time doing the work that all of us wish we could do more of. So we want to appreciate you and extend you that level of respect and appreciation as we hit you with some hard questions.
Well, guys, listen, it's my pleasure being here. As I said before, this is my last interview, and so of this week. So I plan to celebrate. I will probably be having a beer or two, or perhaps even three after this. But it shouldn't stop anybody right now from, cracking open a beer or perhaps pouring a nice glass of Chardonnay and cuddle up by the TV and watch us talk a little bit.
Speaking of, I got some sweet Arizona peach iced tea.
Yeah, unfortunately I'm talking about wine and beer. I'm actually drinking wine,
I know.
So.
Yeah, I'm just extending my show to Arizona peach iced tea in case they want to sponsor it. So, Mr. Elizondo, let's start here. Seems like we've won, right? Disclosures happen. It's over, right? We can all go home, pack up our bags. We're good here, right?
Not quite yet, my friend.
Not quite yet.
If that was the case, I certainly would be, as I've told people, I'd get weird and disappear and go into the mountains and nobody ever see me again. No, but you know what? We're every day we're getting closer and closer, and it's not. It may be one of the things, kind of like falling into a black hole. You're never quite sure when you go beyond the event horizon until it's too late. I think we may be very much the same way. We keep saying, when is it going to happen? When is it going to happen? But if we look back to 3 years ago, we are actually in the middle of it right now. I think a lot of people, because this has been a more gradual process, people are still scratching their heads. They're like, hey, wait a minute. Did we just have disclosure? I think we're in that process. But before we begin, let me do a quick, if I may, shout out to just to you guys, but your production crew that's making this happen. In particular, you've got some rock stars there. I'd of course rather be Squidding being one of them, but also Cristina Gomez and some of those folks. These are the folks that are carrying the torch, like you, Luis, and you, Michael, for the next generation, and really making this conversation happen. As most people know, I am quite technically challenged. I need my daughters and my wife to use my keypads because my fingers are too fat, and I get frustrated. But you guys are the ones that are leveraging this technology, this incredible way to communicate and reach out to people, and it's making a huge difference. So please, from the bottom of my heart, thank you for what you guys are doing. Thank you for beating the streets and making this conversation happen. This really is a grassroots movement, and it's beautiful to witness this as it's growing and it's evolving, and more people are coming under the tent. So again, my hat's off truly to what you guys and gals are doing.
Well, hey, we really appreciate it. Thank you. You inspired us. This starts with you and Mellon and all of the guys at TTSA and all of the scientists and pilots and service members and Navy men and Air Force men and women. You guys are a lot of you guys I've found, especially in the last few months, are frustrated. You're angry. You want some answers, and you're trying to ask the people who hired you for some answers, and they're kind of not answering questions, not answering inquiries, and not taking things seriously. And
that's going to change.
Yeah,
that's going to change.
I see that. I mean, I see that. It's clear. It's so obvious. that's why I said it's over, right? Like, we've got nightly news, we've got 60 Minutes, we've got, the New Yorker, Gary Schwartz, the list goes on and on and on and on and on and on. Like, these magazines are sitting on some very important tables, around DC, around New York City, where decision makers and policy makers live.
We can't fail them now. Now that they've decided to pick up the torch, they've got to know that they're reporting on the right thing. They're taking a huge and enormous risk going out and reporting this in mainstream media. And this is for the first time they're kind of stepping out of the airlock, right? And they're kind of going out into the great unknown as far as a journalist is concerned. So we need to make sure we take every opportunity to thank them and recognize them for taking those chances. Just like you're taking the chance now, having this conversation on the podcast. A journalist is taking that same risk every day that they publish a story. I had an interview today. I won't say which one. And I talked to the journalists after they stopped recording the interview. And I thanked them. And I said, look, thank you for doing this. He said, look, for 2 days leading up to this interview, I took a bunch of crap from all my colleagues. They were sending me memes of little aliens and, really giving him a hard time. And, of course, it's in the name of in jest, right? It's kind of like, oh, we're just having fun. But it's a little bit more than that. There's some vindictiveness there. There's a little bit of, hey, are you sure you really want to do this? So I just want to, just take a second to say thank you to all those journalists out there, the Brian Benders of the world, and the Tim McMillans and the Debrief and MJ and everybody out there, Gaddy, who's doing this. This is a non-political issue.
I always say on this show, it's a bipartisan issue. It's an issue that anyone could come to this table and have a conversation. And I always say that it's a table where if we all just sat at for, say, an hour or two and started talking about this topic, and then, maybe the topic switched to something else, maybe we might find some other things that we agree on. So I love that it's a bipartisan issue, and that's what we push all the time. And we always also try to say, the starting point for this conversation now, and this is just the pure fact that there's things in our sky. Our pilots have chased them. They've caught them on radar. It's been seen apparently for decades. They've shut down nuclear facilities. They're real. There's something in the sky that's real, that's unexplained, that's not Antarctican or Russian or Chinese. It's, it's something it's that diamond in the rough. And it's there. But we don't know what it is. Anything past that or under that foundation is just not valid, at least not yet. So thank you. Thank you. Thank all of the journalists. I mean, like, the Debrief, I love those guys over there. They helped inspire a lot of what's happening. So from the bottom of my heart, I think it is important. I think we definitely should thank all of these people, because without them, this conversation wouldn't be here. But you're right. This is just the start. Like, the big phone home, we're doing that again. And next year it's going to be bigger. It's going to be more impactful. And the conversation is going to be had. Period. Full stop. When, I hope soon. So I guess let's start here, Lou.
Sure.
I really want you to explain this cigarette analogy for me, if you can. You've used it a few times where you describe this cigarette as time. Can you run us through that real quick?
Yeah, sure. Let me start beginning with Newtonian physics, and I won't spend much time, but I think it's important to understand the context and how we have to shift our thinking when we're looking at space-time. So during the Renaissance, you have this gentleman, Sir Isaac Newton, who all of a sudden is able to quantify and qualify the observations we have in physics. Force equals mass times acceleration, have all these wonderful little neat mathematical formulas that describe the physics that we experience here on Earth, like gravity, the apple falling from the tree, and it's in a very real sense. It's physics in a physical sense. And then all of a sudden, several hundred years goes by, and some funny cat with crazy hair comes along who failed the third grade and was a patent clerk, and proposes that the universe in which we live is not, in fact, linear at all. The universe we live in is a lot like think of a rubber band that can be stretched and compressed. and that the notion of space, the three-dimensional space we live in, is inextricably tied to a fourth dimension called time.
Right.
So we have a three-dimensional space, XYZ axis, in which we can maneuver, and time being a function of the fourth dimension. And that very notion that space-time is flexible. It can be stretched and it can be compressed. That's really hard. Go ahead.
I was going to say, I think of it as a sphere that just constantly moves outward. That it touches everything, as more of a rubber band that can even kind of be linear, but like a sphere, something that it goes everywhere. It is everywhere.
Yeah, well, you're right. Maybe how about a big giant sponge, right? So a big blob of sponge that you can pull and push and squeeze, and there's little holes in it. And so recognizing that space and time are tied together and they can be stretched and compressed. We live on Earth where our space-time is relative to the perturbation or the disruption that Earth has on the space-time around it. So if we were, for example, living on the moon or living on, let's say, Jupiter, where the gravity is much greater, or the moon where it's much, much less than Earth, we would experience time slightly different. It would go by a little bit differently. And the more massive of an object you're around, the more that is distorted till eventually you come to something like a black hole where it kind of just breaks down altogether and space-time doesn't even make sense anymore. So if you think of time, and I were to ask you, Luis, and I'm going to do this exercise with you again because maybe some of your audience hasn't heard this before. If I ask you, Luis, what is in the most simplest terms possible, one sentence or less, fewest words possible, what's your definition of the past?
That's a
Don't overthink it. Don't overthink it.
So it's something that's already happened.
Something that's already happened. Yeah.
Perfect. Michael, something that already happened. So I'm going to give you another chance here, Luis. With what Michael just said, if the definition of the past is an event that already occurred, what is the future?
Something that hasn't.
Great, right? Something that hasn't happened yet. What that means is that the present, where we live and everything that we experience, is not actually a moment of space-time. It's actually, if you were to look at, let's say, a fuse of a time bomb, right? Where the ashes that have burned are the past. That's real and it's there. That part of the fuse that remains unlit, it's an infinitely long fuse, that remains unlit. It hasn't ignited yet. That's the future. Right. The present is that infinitesimally small moment of space-time, probably measured in Planck time, where you have a transition between the future becoming the past. It's an illusion. It's not really a moment. It's a infinitely small moment that's moving forward. It's never static. And so by that definition, it's the present is really nothing more. Everything that we think and we love and we hate and we fear and all the memories that we have are gained from that very, 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 very tiny moment of space-time.
Yeah.
Why is that important? Well, because we know space-time can be flexible. And if you were to, let's take our analogy again of the fuse, right? Or a cigarette or a cigar burning. And you were to remove the glare and take, let's say, a microscope and really zoom in, you would notice something very interesting about the moment of ignition.
Right.
You would notice that the fuse, or that the cigarette, or that the cigar where the cherry is, that moment of ignition, burns unevenly. Right. In fact, there are portions at the very, very small, we're talking quantum world now, where moments of the past are actually now in front of the future and back and forth. It's an uneven burn until eventually you have everything is burnt and now you have the past.
Yeah.
So theorists right now, especially in the quantum world, have established a theory that says some of the observations we have with the electron, when we went to high school, we always learned that the electron orbited the nucleus of an atom. We now realize that's absolutely not correct. What we've learned now is it's called an electron cloud. And what's happening is that the electron is literally ebbing in and out of existence trillions of times per second all around, and you can never predict where it's going to go. And what scientists now believe is that the fabric of space-time at that level, when you're that small, is porous. There's holes, and you can actually zip in and out of the fabric of space-time, and now you're here, now you're not. Now you're here, now you're not. And this is important because when you think about space-time, we experience time pretty much in a linear fashion, but we experience space in a three-dimensional fashion. What if there is other things? We know that in the quantum world is possible. What if there are other things, other realities that time itself can be also experienced in a three-dimensional sense? Yeah. Meaning, we are having this conversation right now with your lovely audience, right here, right now.
Right.
But if I had the ability where my space-time was a little bit more flexible, if I was sitting right here 5 minutes from now, or right here 5 minutes ago, we would never be able to have this conversation. It'd be like two ships passing in the night.
Correct.
And so that is one of the theories that was presented at some time in long time ago in ATIP. Okay. And furthermore, it also might explain some of the other phenomenon, such as what we call remote viewing, or maybe psychic abilities, or precognition, human precognition. Because the human brain is a lot of scientists now that are neuroscientists believe the brain is really a part of quantum entanglement, and that there are quantum processes occurring in the human consciousness, and if that is indeed the case, then we may be able to up here, not necessarily here, but in our brains, be able to experience time in a slightly different way. We do know that when we have traumatic incidents that happen to us, a lot of people report everything going in slow motion.
Right.
And that may very well be experiencing the quantum state of human consciousness.
Yeah. Well, okay. So thank you for that explanation. It's beautiful. And I got excited as you were saying about it, because that's exactly what I wanted to hear. And that's how I remembered it. The fuse, okay, or let's say the cigarette. Does this phenomena, in your opinion, live within this cigarette?
Well, most of the universe does, and that's my point.
Right.
We have 5 fundamental senses that we view the universe. Right. We see it, we hear it, we taste it, we touch it, we smell it, and that's it. But there is an entire reality around each and every one of us right now. You've got Wi-Fi signals coursing through your body. You've got radar returns coming in from the airport. You've got GPS signals coming down from satellites. You've got FM, AM coursing through your body. You've got cosmic rays coming in from outer space, neutrinos coming in from the sun. All this is occurring right around you right now, and you can't experience it because you don't have the equipment to. So take a nice, bright, starry night. Take a look at the beautiful heavens. You say, wow, honey, look at these beautiful stars. Now, if you were to look through that same exact night sky using a radio telescope, where you can see infrared and ultraviolet and all these other things, all of a sudden the whole universe lights up in front of you and looks completely different. Yeah. Now, it's not different. You just can't perceive all of that because we're human beings. Furthermore, when you look at that, and we realize that most of the world lies beyond our perception and comprehension, there's also a scalability issue. So I am a human being, and when I judge the universe relative to me, I know I can go in that direction 13.5 billion light years, and I can go that direction 13.5 billion light years, and that is the extent of the known universe. The visible known universe is approximately 27 billion light years across, and we are right in the middle, right? Now, with that said, from a scale perspective, the atom is 1 × 10⁻26 in size. So there is equally per scale just as large a space inside every single one of us as there is outside. And so, but we can't perceive it. The only thing we can perceive is something maybe 50 feet or 100 feet in front of our face. So by definition, 99.99999% of the universe, we will never be able to interact with, and we will never be able to see or to sense, because it's just where we are stuck in the universe.
Yeah, no, well, I sorry, Michael, because here's why I asked the question is, so if we've established that this cigarette is everything and anything that has ever happened in the entire history of all of it, including this phenomena and things that we've seen and slippage of time, all of it. My question is who's smoking the cigarette? Who lit the cigarette? if that makes sense.
That's
or
that's a great question
who lit the fuse?
For philosophy and theologians. This is the age-old question that mankind has been trying to ask itself. This is why we have things like religions, and we have origin stories. We want to know. It's kind of in our DNA to try to figure that out and ask those hard questions. Religion's been asking that question trying to answer that question since we came out of caves.
Right.
Based on, can I ask a quick question? So this is fascinating to me, and we talk about, I'd love to hear your thoughts on, type 1, type 2, type 3, type 4, type 5 civilizations. But are you familiar with type minus civilizations? This concept of the ability of human beings to, instead of expanding out into the stars, expanding inward and mastering the atomic level. And so it's basically the idea that we can begin to manipulate and rearrange our very own composition on the quantum level that changes our abilities in reality. And based on what you're saying, I'm curious, when we talk about saucers and tic tacs and triangles, do you think it's possible not only that these are, potentially extraterrestrial beings that have mastered type 5 civilization, but they've mastered it inward, where they can actually manipulate and manage at the quantum level?
Yeah, well, look, we're doing cellular engineering now, aren't we? Right. So 100 years ago, we were doing prosthetics. We started mastering prosthetics and surgery and whatnot. 70 years ago, we started mastering transplants of organs. 20 years ago, we started mastering cellular engineering. 10 years ago, we really started mastering human genome engineering. I mean, it's a matter of time. Sure, we're close to doing it now. Now, if you mean with your conscious brain trying to rearrange things, that may happen at some point in the future. Maybe we evolve as a species to do that. But whether we do it with our conscious brain or we do it with some sort of technical interface, I think it's inevitable. That's exactly where we're going. We're going to the point where we are already engineering material now at the atomic level. We're getting into nano level engineering. Nano, by definition, 1/1000th, of the size of a meter. So we're getting to that stage now.
But do you see any of these sightings, the things that we're seeing, the UFO phenomenon? Do you think it can be associated with beings that either are technologically able to, or on a conscious level able to manipulate reality itself from a quantum level?
Well, I think right now anything is on the table. Look, we're kind of a basic species. I can go right now to DARPA and I can find a room where there is a pilot sitting in a dark room with a helmet on his head, and through thought process, he's flying an aircraft halfway around the world. Okay.
Yeah.
Is that telepathy? Well, no, but it is a technical interface that is reading the human brain waves and interpreting that into an action. And we're doing that now. So I don't think it's much of a leap if we're already doing something like that now, that in 100 or 1,000 years, we're probably going to get a lot better at doing that. And I think it's certainly possible. I think, the one thing we learn about the future is that, every time we try to put a limit on it, we wind up being catastrophically wrong. Back in the late 1800s, one of the famous quote by one of the directors of the patent office, he said, in a couple of years here, we won't even need a U.S. patent office anymore, because all the inventions of mankind that could ever be invented will have been invented.
Right.
If you can imagine that.
Yeah.
So
well, that was way off. That was way off, clearly. So real quick, let's just reset the room. I want to let everybody know in the chat. We see your super chats. We're not ignoring them. We're writing them. Rather's got them saved. So at the end of the show, when we got that time to open those questions up for Lou, we will definitely be asking those questions, and they'll be at the top of the list. And then whatever questions else, because the chat's going like crazy, we'll get them in there. And also, just a quick reminder, if you're enjoying the show, like, share, subscribe, tell everybody what's going on right now, because we're having a fascinating conversation with Mr. Lue Elizondo, former ATIP director. So let's continue. Michael, where do you want to go next with Mr. Elizondo?
Well, yeah, I'm curious. So, again, getting back to this conversation about UFO phenomenon, things that have been observed. Obviously, you came up with in ATIP the 5 observables. Do you think that anything that was released this week from Jeremy Corbell, any of the radar information that we saw, do you think anything in those drops exhibited any of the 5 observables?
Well, let's rehash those 5 observables real quick, right? We're talking instantaneous acceleration, hypersonic velocities, low observability, transmedium travel, and anti-gravity, if you want to call it that, or positive lift, or whatever you want to call it. We have objects on a scope. Some of those objects were later filmed going into the water, right, and going in, and in some cases even coming out. So that's one, transmedium travel. Positive lift or anti-gravity. Well, there were no associated wings, no control surfaces, so there might be another observable there, right? And then of course there's the eyewitness reports and additional radar. Look, let's not forget you're looking at one radar scope. There were other radars, okay? So don't fool yourself. There were a lot of eyes looking at those things, and it'd be interesting to see what that data suggests. I'm very careful to take a single video or one anecdote, because a lot of times you're only looking at something that occurred in a very brief moment of time and space. You don't know what happened leading up to that, and you don't know what happened afterwards, and you don't know the other circumstances involved, right? Were there other cameras? Were there other, radar sensors? Were there other eyewitnesses? So all that information needs to be forthcoming. This is precisely why it's important for Congress to give more time than 180 days to do the report, because you don't want to rush this. I know it's tempting. People say, I want the answers. We've been waiting 70 years. Well, if that's the case, what's another 180 days going to mean, right?
Right.
I mean, let's do it right. Let's get all the information. I can tell you, I've got calls from DC from friends of mine. And they're like, look, dude, they didn't even come talk to me.
Right.
I've got data sitting in a database right now, and I wasn't even asked.
And when you say they, you mean the UAPTF and the Pentagon, the DoD. Yeah,
the Pentagon. There are people that aren't even being asked for data. And how can you write a report and give it to Congress when you haven't even asked everybody all the questions yet?
Is this being taken seriously by the Biden administration?
I'm certainly not going to speak for our president. I respect the position too much. That doesn't matter who's in charge. Our president is very, very busy. He's got a lot of things on his plate right now. I would definitely not want to be a president during these times, between a global pandemic and all sorts of issues that he's dealing with on a daily basis, from transnational terrorism, nuclear proliferation, economic issues, social issues. I mean, he's got his hands full. Are they aware of this? They are absolutely aware of it. Are they taking it seriously? His last, and this is by no, not intended to disrespect anybody. I'm apolitical, but when an elected official kind of laughs something off, forget about the origin, forget about the word UAP. You have something, and it has been confirmed by our Department of Defense that something is incurring upon our controlled U.S. airspace, and there's nothing we can do about it. I don't think that's a laughing matter. I think if these things were to be doing this over the White House, I don't think anybody would be laughing right now. In fact, we'd probably be trying to shoot him out of the sky. So I don't know. I don't know why people laugh. That's not really, for me, an appropriate reaction, especially when our brave men and women in uniform are reporting these things. And by the way, they're not that far from DC.
Yeah.
I
mean, no, I don't think it's good either. But I think they're starting to stop laughing because, for example, we shared on the show the other day, Newt Gingrich on his website, released a discussion he was having in front of people about this topic, and he would say, and again, whatever side you lean on, Newt Gingrich is a masterful politician, but he's also a really great thinker. And this is not a topic that Newt Gingrich has ever talked about, ever. He was a former Speaker of the House. That's a big deal. And he didn't laugh once, not once. Right.
Well, and neither did Harry Reid. He was a Senate Majority Leader. I mean, this is a serious issue. This is not a political issue. This is a humanity issue.
Right.
And we need to look at it that way.
Well, you know, that's why we did the big phone home. You know, it's time to start having this conversation and asking our senators and elected, you know, representatives, hey, we want more transparency. We want more science. We want a more open discussion. Right. We want some grants given to some universities so they can start studying this stuff.
Absolutely. Oh, and by the way, if I may, Luis.
Yeah, please.
There's only part of this conversation that belongs under the realm of the U.S. government.
Right.
Let me state from my perspective. I only want the government to look at this from a national security perspective. Mm-hmm. I do not want the government involved in this conversation in anything other than what its job is, and that is to protect our borders and our national sovereignty. Anything else, I want other people involved. I want academics, I want scientists, philosophers, theologians, teachers. I want everybody to have this conversation. I do not want the government thinking on my behalf of what I should or should not think about this. It's none of their damn business. They have a very narrow lane on this topic that they should be sticking to. Anything beyond that is not their business. And frankly, I don't want them involved in it. So,
right.
That's based on you saying that. Yeah, I'm curious. So that being said, what's your interest in running for Congress? You've mentioned it a couple of times, and at first I thought it was a bit in jest, and then I've heard it again. And I was like, oh, he might be serious.
Yeah, he's a little fiery about it.
Yeah.
Look, I don't want to run for Congress, but I will if I have to. Look, it's like going back inside and being a government official. I don't want to do that. Look, I just want to retire. I want to
right.
You know, have a beer and like I said, if I walk down the streets and nobody knows who the hell I am, that's exactly where I want to be. But the problem is, I took an oath a long time ago to defend this country, like as I've said before, from all enemies, foreign and domestic. And when that enemy winds up being bureaucracy or people inside the Pentagon that have now confused their responsibility for privilege, I've got a problem with that.
Yeah.
And if it requires me having to, put my damn boots back on again and get into the fray and start knocking heads, I will do that. I don't want to. There's people that are far more qualified to me than
not
me
only
to
that,
run for
but
office.
I don't think you're allowed to knock heads in Congress, Lou.
I mean that
I think they frown upon that. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah, that is a for anybody out there, that is a figure of speech.
I thought it was funny.
Metaphorically, proverbially.
So here's the thing. We had this discussion on the show the other day, and we talked about, do we want Lue Elizondo? And this might be an unpopular opinion in the chat, but we were thinking about it. Like, if Lue Elizondo ran for Congress, first of all, and I know you won't answer this question, but we were like, what party would he run under? Whose seat would he take? What state would he run in? There's a lot of interesting questions. I don't know if you'd want to answer any of those. If you don't,
just hypothetically, Lou. Just hypothetically.
I'll share with you right now. Like I said, I've been apolitical for a very long time. Here's my personal philosophy. I tend to be socially liberal and fiscally conservative. Meaning, let me explain. You do you. I went to war, so you have the right to do what you want, practice what you want, believe what you want. And I will defend your right to do it, even if it means you don't like me and you spit in my face for it. You know what? I will defend your right to do that, because I believe that everybody has a right to pursue their own happiness, up to the point you don't interfere with somebody else's right to pursue happiness. Okay, so as long as you do what you want to do, you want to believe and behave the way you want to behave, as long as you don't interfere or take away the rights of somebody else, I will support you to the end of the earth doing that, even if it conflicts with me. But at the same point, don't tell me what I have to do as well. Okay. And so as far as my fiscal conservative, look, I believe government should be held to the same level of responsibility as each and every one of you. You all pay taxes, and you all have to be responsible for your own financial health. If you overspend, that's on you, baby. You can't come back as a government and say, oh, we overspent, let's go back into the kitty, take more. No. And what I've said before to people, look, if I ever got into a position where I was, let's say, back in the Department of Defense, first of all, for the record, you don't want a guy like me coming back, because I will be draconian. I will do things that you will hear this screaming from here in Wyoming back in DC, because
those screams will not be coming from heads being cracked. That has been established.
No. It's gonna come from draconian policies. All this crap, the millions we spend on just chauffeurs alone for our senior executives so they can grab a meeting. No more. You take your Prius, baby. or you know what, if you want, there's a Humvee sitting right out there you can grab, and it'll take you. Here's your Kevlar, right? And all this VIP parking and designated crap. I know it sounds silly, but that's the mentality. We have come to a point where rather than focus on those people actually doing the work in government, we tend to align our allegiances to our boss above us, right? And that's the exact opposite way of real leadership. Real leadership is your loyalty is to everybody below you. That's your job is to work hard for them. Well, the more senior you are, in my opinion, the further back you should be parking. You should let the worker bees that are coming in at 6, 7 o'clock in the morning that are doing the work for you. Those are the ones that should be parking up front, not you. And anyways, those are, that's kind of my philosophy.
Nah, man, God, I would want to have you back to actually have maybe, because I do want to dive into your political sort of philosophies. Because it's funny you say it almost sounds like a libertarian, but with some social, social. It sounds libertarianish. Don't mess with me, I won't mess with you. Make sure you pay your bills, and let's get this show on the road. Like, we got work to do. And it sounds like a lot of people have gotten comfortable.
If someone really needs help, we give that help, right?
Of course.
I'm not saying just feed people to the lions. There are categories of people who are truly underserved.
Social safety nets.
We need to create social safety nets, and we also need to have a way to encourage people to realize their full potential. And look, Luis, like your dad, my dad was a political prisoner in Cuba. I grew up with stories. We're in exile. I cannot go to Cuba. I can't go because I'll be put in front of a firing squad. Right. So, for me, individual freedoms and liberty is critical. Even if those opinions differ against mine, it's okay. Yeah. I don't mind that.
I call myself a lefty libertarian, so that's kind of jives me as well.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like because we both are Cuban, I'm not going to give it a label. I'm just going to say very middle of the road sort of feel for things. Give me the information, then let me make a decision based off of the information you give me. But
I don't need to identify with a flag or a party. Okay, I identify with the issues, and this is part of the issue we have today, because you are being forced to identify either as a conservative or as a liberal. But you know what? 90% of the people have kind of a piece of both.
Yes,
right. But we're being forced to no, you have to choose a side. Right. You either have chocolate or vanilla ice cream. There is no strawberry. There is no,
can't mix both.
No, you can't mix both, which is that's
ridiculous.
Realistic.
It's ridiculous. No, it's a ridiculous notion. And honestly, I was going to say greedily, I never want you running for Congress. Only because if you ran for Congress, you'd have less time to have conversations with us. You'd have less time to talk about the UAP topic, because now as a congressman, you have to serve a constituency. You got to make sure that your constituency is happy, and you're not going to have the opportunity to talk about this topic at the level that you do.
Well, maybe you do. Maybe what you do, if you are a really effective leader, you set aside one day every 2 weeks where you spend 2 hours doing a podcast just like this, communicating with not just your voters, but people who are interested in the causes that you're involved with, right? So you come on and say, look, this is, 2 weeks from now, we're going to have another one of these, and I'm going to tell you exactly what we're doing for disclosure, exactly what we're doing for transparency, and by the way, also where I'm falling short and where I need your help, right? So
Lou,
that's amazing.
Lue Elizondo, I would like to put in my resume for your media operations director for that show.
You got a deal.
That sounds like a job. And I tell you, you convinced me, man. Run. If you're going to if you promise us that, if that's part of your platform as you run, oh man, I will go to the hill for you, sir. Okay? Like, honestly, that's exactly what we need. And I mean, I couldn't imagine, say, you and a Marco Rubio having these discussions once a week, 2 hours a day. And who else knows who might join? So, man, that's exciting stuff. I love it.
So speaking of the hill, I've got a question. Max Moskovich had Harry Reid on his program the other day, and Harry Reid said something that I found to be really interesting. He said, of all the information I have, and I quote, of all the information I have, which is quite a bit, I think there's no indication whatsoever that they're harmful, being whatever is operating the UFOs that have the 5 observables. Kind of scary. Then he goes on to say, kind of scary, to be honest with you, but there's no indication of there being a reason to be afraid of them. But I think they're big time scary. What do you make of that statement from Harry Reid?
Well, first of all, Harry Reid is absolutely an American hero. And I say that because I've had the honor and privilege to work on his program and project for quite some time. Let me just say that. Secondly, I can't answer for the good senator, but let me tell you what I think people get confused with. And not, by the way, not Harry Reid. I'm just saying in general, people. Okay? We talk about the potential threat, right? But people automatically assume when you say there's a potential threat, they think, oh, you're going down the fear mongering avenue, and you're talking about hostile intent. We're not. There is a distinct difference between a potential threat and something being hostile. Let me give you an example. If one of these UAP flies next to a 737 full of 250 passengers while, kicking back on their way to Los Angeles, and it gets too close, and now the pilot has to take evasive maneuvers, is that a threat? Well, yes, of course it's a threat. It's an air safety threat, right? It's an issue. Is it necessarily hostile? No. It doesn't mean it's necessarily being hostile. If I go to an airport, and I've said this analogy over and over again, if I get on an airplane, that's not the jet engine isn't a threat to me. But if I jump out of the airplane and I walk around to the back of the engine when it's firing up, is that a threat to me? Well, yeah, it's a threat to my health and safety. Chances are I'm going to get burned. I'm probably going to lose my hearing. There's going to be some consequences of that. It's not necessarily the intention of the jet engine to hurt me. It's just that it's the nature of the technology. So I want to make sure that people understand that when certainly when I'm talking about a potential threat, it doesn't necessarily mean hostile intent. We haven't seen any overt hostile intent yet. Okay.
Well, the Italians might say different.
Well, the Italians absolutely will say something different.
I mean, I feel like a lot of people kind of miss that one in season 1.
And not just Italy, but some folks in Brazil would say the same thing. Yeah. So there's a few countries that have said, whoa, not so fast. We've had different experiences. But that aside, I think we need to approach this cautiously and deliberately. I don't think there's any cause for panic. I'm certainly not going to sit there and raise my hands and say, oh, welcome, brother. I'm just not that guy. It's like if I have a new neighbor that moves into the neighborhood, I might offer the guy or gal a beer, but I'm not going to necessarily, invite him to come over to babysit my kids. There's an assessment period that has to happen. Right.
Yeah.
Right. One of the things we talk about here often is that, 99%, and this is just a hypothetical here, but 99% of the things people see in the sky are probably explainable. There's these diamonds in the rough, this UAP phenomenon that may, have one of the 5 observables, or 2 or 3 or 4 or 5. Of that hypothetical 1%, in your personal opinion, what percentage of those do you think have non-human or off-world potential properties?
Potentially all of them. Potentially none of them. This is why we need more data. When you ask a question like that, potential, what is the potential? Well, 100%. Also 0%. We don't know. And this is exactly why we need to look into this, because it's your guess is as good as mine.
Is it though? Is my guess as good as yours, Lou?
It is. We're all observing the same thing. I might have more data and information, but I haven't been able to say conclusively one way or the other. Otherwise, I would have. And I want to be very, very careful with that. This is the problem with the UFO community that we have today, because everybody is sure of something and they can't all be right. And they all say, no, shh, just hush. Trust me. Those guys, they don't know what they're talking about. Just Just here, look at me here, listen to me. Don't pay attention to them. You know, they don't know what they're talking about. I have all the answers. By the way, give me some money. You know, that's the crap we're dealing with.
I know. I hate it.
You know, I want to blow that out of the water. I want to blow it to smithereens, get rid of all the charlatans and hucksters and snake oil salesmen. And hopefully what comes back is a very much focused scientific and philosophical approach with the academic rigor you would expect out of Stanford or Harvard or Oxford. That's what I want. I want the very best and brightest looking at this topic and not superimposing their own narratives or belief systems or whatnot.
With absolute authority and conviction. It's very frustrating.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, okay. So Lou, we've only got about 11 or 12 minutes with you. Can I ask you for a favor? Can I get 10 more minutes?
Yeah.
Okay. I'm sorry. I'm sorry to do that live and put you on the spot, but
if you said no, that would have been fantastic.
No, it would have been fantastic. And we would have been like, all right. So there's a couple of things. First of all, I don't necessarily want you to comment. And I'll start with, Alex Dietrich. Thank you. American hero.
Absolutely.
So I want to thank
one of America's finest.
Yep. I want to thank Ryan Graves. And I want to thank Senator Marco Rubio because the layers that you have added to this David Fravor encounter is the best 7-layer dip I've ever had in my life. It really adds a lot of context and nuance to what happened that day. And I know we still don't have radar tracking. I know we still don't have the longer version of the video, but damn, if all of those people are lying or mistaken, it's just that to me is an even greater impossibility than this phenomena existing. So with that said, I don't want to spend too much time, but I wanted to thank them. And if Alex Dietrich is watching, we'd love to have you on the show because I think she is
Alex,
like
Jim Slate, Dave Fravor are American heroes. And by the way, there's a lot more that haven't come out yet that were in the E2 Hawkeye and that were on the bridge of the Princeton, the guys like Sean Cahill. There's
we also
Ryan
got
Graves.
two more pilots that were in those cockpits that we haven't heard from yet. So there's more layers coming. So
there is.
So I'm excited for that. But what I want to transition to, because I know this is important to you, and there's still some questions that I have. The first is your erasing of your emails. Can you clarify what the hell is going on with that?
Sure. So,
and is this part of why Sheehan is sort of joining your team?
So 2 questions.
Yes.
The first one is the deletion of my emails. First of all, people say, oh, that's normal and routine. Bullshit. Mm-hmm. No, it's not. Okay. When you are an intelligence officer, there are specific guidelines for the destruction of emails. Okay. When I was working ATIP and also when I was working Guantanamo Bay, those are records that are supposed to be kept permanently and then given over to the National Archives after 25 years. Fact. Okay. Now, why is that? Because when you are involved in some sort of intelligence effort, especially as it relates to a trial like the military commissions, the 9/11 trial, right? 9/11, the guys who were responsible for the terrorist attacks that are sitting at Guantanamo Bay, all that correspondence is considered discoverable. It's considered evidence in a court of law.
Right.
It is illegal to destroy, in fact, those types of records. It's against the law. So this is not just violating policy. This is actually borderline now illegal act, right? Mm-hmm. And when the Pentagon comes out and says, yeah, Lou had no assigned duties, he had nothing to do with ATIP, they say, okay, prove it. Oh, well, yeah, we don't have any emails. Well, wait a minute. So you're saying on one hand, he had no assigned duties and wasn't involved in ATIP, and then you turn around and you're telling the world that, oh, we really don't know. We don't. You destroyed the guy's emails when, by the way, by law, you were supposed to keep them. Interesting.
It's criminal.
So what else did you do? Well, it's deceitful is what it is, right? Yeah. And it's disingenuous. Now, between us, I don't think my emails have gone anywhere. I don't think they're good. The good news is that some of those emails still exist.
Yeah.
And those emails are probably part, if I was a guessing man, without going into too much detail, part of an official complaint.
Yeah.
That,
maybe went to the IG. Maybe.
You know?
You never know.
Wouldn't that be something?
Well,
Well, you asked about Daniel Sheehan, right? That was your second question?
Yes.
Okay, so let me make sure I answer that because I don't want somebody getting mad saying, "Oh, you didn't answer the Daniel." So
yeah, no, I'm sorry. No, I had stepped over you, so that would have been my fault.
So let me say a few words here before I talk about Daniel Sheehan, okay? Watergate, okay? Silkwood, Pentagon Papers, Oliver North, okay? Landmark cases that affected this country. The one common denominator, Daniel Sheehan. Daniel Sheehan is probably one of the world's greatest constitutional attorneys that we've had this entire century. Okay, Harvard trained and absolute expert on constitutional law. And at the end of the day, this is what we're talking about. So, in order for me to go toe to toe against the Pentagon, I knew I need the very best. Okay, now Daniel Sheehan is entitled. He's an individual, just like I am. He's entitled to his own position, his own personal opinions. And remember at the beginning of this conversation, what I said, right? I will defend your right to do that, even if I don't agree with it. Okay.
Right.
So I did not hire Daniel Sheehan because I agreed with his personal views. I hired Daniel Sheehan because he's one of the greatest constitutional attorneys this country has ever seen, and he's got a great track record. So. If you're going to go against an 800-pound gorilla, you better come prepared.
Yeah.
And so Daniel Sheehan is.
Sorry. I'm looking at the time and I just want to get these questions in. I'm going to push back a little bit on this, just a little bit. And it's an optics thing for me. On one hand, you've got Stephen Greer yelling at the top of his lungs that you're a disinformation agent. Daniel Sheehan worked for him, and now no longer works for him. He works for you. And I can understand. He's an attorney. He could work for whoever the hell hires him. Totally understandable. But it's his personal beliefs conflict really hard with yours. And so I'm afraid from an optics standpoint, it seems to muddy the waters a little bit. It's almost like we're getting two messages out of one effort, if that makes sense. And if there's anything that you could say that maybe
your wife said so.
Sorry, I'm getting a. My wife.
You got it.
Literally looking at me.
Well, we're still 5 minutes early. We still got 5 minutes in the official show.
I'm good.
Yes.
Okay,
you're good.
She's saying you've got me for even a little bit more time.
Oh God, Jesus, thank you.
Okay, Jesus, they're saying thank you. Okay.
I thought I had upset the lady Elizondo.
No, she actually just said that you owe her, but she's given me more time.
Oh my God, thank you.
No problem.
Thank you.
No worries.
So going back to that, you know what I mean? Like, I just, if there's anything that you could sort of set my mind at ease, this is like a question I had,
look,
you know?
Sure. Look, as far as muddying the waters, I think Mr. Sheehan, like everybody else, is entitled to their opinion. Okay. Yeah. For him, representing another individual is not a conflict of interest in my mind.
Right.
There are attorneys that will go out and they will represent the mob and then turn around and represent somebody else, because that's what a good defense attorney does, right? You're supposed to take your own personal conviction out of something and now represent the client as fair and objective as possible. Now, at the end of the day, you are navigating the legal system and you are making sure that your client is receiving the benefit of the law, right? And is protected by the law. And that's why I have Mr. Sheehan working with me. As far as his relationships with other clients, that's his business. And whether I happen to agree or disagree with those clients, it's really not my business.
Right.
And just like after this talk, if I go out, I go have a beer with a neighbor, that's not really your business, nor is it my business who you see after this. Right.
Right. I get that aspect of it for sure. You know, I totally understand that. And you're 100% right. Like I'm that's not the issue. It's just like, again, it's just an optics thing for me. Like, it's just, I just don't want to, I don't want people who are coming in that are new to this getting too, like, I don't know, if I was like, I'm sorry if it's a sensitive question.
No, Luis. Listen, it's a fair question, but we have to remember we have to take emotion out of this.
Right.
This is not an emotional decision. This is a logical and fact-based decision, right?
Right.
And this is important when you're going up against a formidable enemy, you better have the right people on your team. You know, when I was in working with the special operations community, there are a lot of guys there that, you know, I wouldn't be caught dead with on a Friday night going out somewhere, you know, because there's nothing good going to happen as a result. But more, you put those guys behind a trigger, man, and all of a sudden they're the best point guy you have ever seen. You want that guy right next to you.
No, I'm with you. I'm with you. And look, this is nothing personal against Sheehan. I honestly, I've listened. I love listening to him speak. I respect his history, especially with moving America forward, you know, and forward thinking, especially a lot, and has been part of uncovering some really dark secrets in American history. So from that aspect, like, you know, he's got my full respect, and I'd love to maybe one day talk to him because I agree, not with everything he says, but some of those things I'm like, oh, that's pretty interesting. So you've explained your position on that, and so I guess, you know, we can move on. There was Michael. Did you have a question? Because I've been hogging this interview. I'm sorry.
No, it's totally fine, and we got to get to the super chats as well. But I just wanted to say, like, I get that. I get the idea that you want to have the absolute best person on the job for the job that they're doing. And when we're talking about disclosure, when we're talking about this thing that is so important, and it is one of the things that is hidden beneath the surface, and it's compartmentalized within the government, we got to do everything in our damn power to shake the tree. And so if Danny Sheehan's the right guy to do that, he's the right guy to do that.
Well, and remember, again, let's go back to the beginning of this conversation when I said we have to respect everybody's opinion.
Right.
How hypocritical of it would be of me for me to say that and then turn around and hire an attorney that only believes exactly the way I believe. That's
right.
That's
well, I guess in my brain I went, well, gosh, aren't there any other, you know, really great savvy political attorneys that, you know, maybe some young guns, some new blood, someone that's really smart and doesn't have a bias. He's there for the truth.
Hey, we got room. Come on.
Yeah, okay, awesome. Great. Any attorneys out there, hit them, Mr. Elizondo.
If you know any attorneys that want to come and be part of this, you know what? We've got a lot of room for everybody. Come on. Would love to have you on board.
So this is not just you're open. Okay, great. Like, see, like, that's what I want to hear. Like, I just want to hear something that's like, okay, yeah, he's open to getting a whole legal team. Like, and this is not just a disclosure thing. This is a fighting for you, Lue Elizondo, you know, against this element that's erasing emails, that's, you know, holding up information in places. Like, you know, we had Kevin Childress on the show, and, you know, he worked at the IG, you know, like he really laid out for us sort of how these things work. So bravo to you. You know, like, I love that you've become really fiery in the last, I'd say, month and a half. Like, you're not taking any more shit, and I like it.
Well, Luis, let me say this too. I want to make sure people are clear. I'm not doing this IG investigation necessarily for me. I'm doing it for all of us. Okay?
Right.
This is a way to ensure transparency and hold our government accountable to the ideals that they have sworn to uphold. Right. And so anybody who is going to take advantage of that, and instead they confuse their responsibility for privilege and begin starting to make unilateral decisions for which they're not authorized to make, and do things like this, we've got a serious problem on our hands. Those elements must be rooted out. They must, because they what they do is they threaten democracy is what they do. They threaten the very ethos of what we all agree America should be. That is decidedly un-American when you start abusing your power and trying to hide the truth from the Americans. Hey, man, you know, you work for us. You know, let's not forget, your job in the government is to serve the people, not the other way around. And if you have forgotten that, then maybe it's time to find a new job.
Yeah.
Quick question, real quick. I'm just curious if you're aware, Lou, of any, and I know I'm switching back here to the UAP phenomenon topic real quick, but I think it's important. Are you aware of any other videos or anything else that the public should be aware of or expect to see when it comes to the 5 observables? Any other video evidence or anything that we should know about? Or
maybe that's already unclassified, kind of like some of these videos were. Some of these were already floating around online before they popped up, you know, in the New York Times.
Yeah. You know, there's a lot of other videos and photographs, as I've always said. unfortunately, a lot of these reside on classified systems, and because of that, I can't violate my security oath. But I have gone as far as I can to the ledge and told people from day one that there is more video, there's better video, there's longer video, there's videos that are much more newer and much more recent. I think at the time people thought I was speaking in hyperbole. I wasn't. I was being very specific. I knew exactly what was out there. I know exactly what I've seen. And hopefully by now people know every time I have one of these conversations, I always leave some breadcrumbs for people to follow. I'm not trying to play a game here, and where in the world is Waldo? I'm trying to have a conversation without going to jail. And
Speaking of where's Waldo, the black triangle, that image has been, the idea of that image has been floating around on Twitter forever, and people want to know if it's real, if that photo exists, Lou.
Let's just say that there exists some very, very, very compelling documentation and other media that exists. I have to be very careful confirming or denying something specifically if the government has decided not to address it. I have to respect that. But what I can say is that there is some very, very compelling information that has not seen the light of day yet.
Thank you.
And I wanted to ask this one. This is one of our, I think, last two questions from us, and then we're going to open it up to the super chats. Thank you guys for being so patient, and thank you, Lou, for sticking around for a couple more minutes.
Yeah, we really appreciate it, Lou. Thank you so much, man.
Sure.
So
I don't think I had a choice. My wife came in here, and so. Well, don't thank me. You need to thank my wife.
Yeah, well, I always love talking to your wife. And by the way, this is the show for some reason where wives yell in on the live stream. Like Jazz Shaw gets yelled at by his wife when he's on the show.
Let me just tell you, people think that we're because we're Latin and we're Cuban, we're kind of fiery and stuff. Dude, you have no idea.
No.
I'm married to an Eastern European dude, and. Dude, hell hath no fury.
Yeah.
Believe me.
Yeah. No, I can tell you right now, if I revealed some of the most intimate moments of me being a puppy, all would be, it would be, God, Twitter, UFO Twitter would be real gross.
Al-Qaeda and ISIS ain't got nothing.
Nothing.
On what?
Yeah.
Boy,
Anyway, we love the ladies.
Thank you. I'm just kidding.
Thank you, Miss Elizondo.
Thank you, Miss Elizondo.
Thank you, Mrs. Mataluni, and soon to be one day, Mrs. Jimenez. We'll see. I love you, babe. Okay, so this is a question really to quell conspiracy. Okay, it's a question that I've gotten a couple of times, and I wanted to just get your reaction to it. And I've never heard the question asked. I'm sure it has been because you've done a million interviews, and we thank you for all your time. I can't even imagine how many hours you put into doing this kind of stuff.
For nothing.
Not for nothing, but
for no pay. I mean,
no compensation. So the question is, are you a civilian?
I am a civilian.
Okay.
There's a difference between a government employee and a government contractor. We're all civilians. Government employees too are civilians, unless you're wearing a uniform. I am absolutely a civilian. I think you're asking me, I am employed by the United States government, and ask that question very carefully, and maybe I can give you a good answer. Are you asking me, am I a government employee, or am I working as a contractor in that capacity?
Well, it's a clearance question. The question was, if he's a civilian, why does he have a TSSCI clearance?
Because I am currently a government contractor, and that's all I'm prepared to say right now.
Boom.
But I am a government contractor.
And that makes sense, and that's the reason why you have it. And that's exactly what I wanted you to say. I wanted to quell people's conspiratorial thinking, because sometimes things go crazy. So again, I'm just trying to quell that. Yeah, that was it. That was like.
Should we get into the super
let's
chats?
do it. Let's do it in the super chat.
Drew's got
Rather,
beer
get
to
in
drink.
here.
I got beer to drink. We all got
people
beer to
got
drink.
beer to drink. We got 10 minutes left with Mr. Elizondo. So, Mr. Squidding, what?
Brother, there you are.
There he is.
There he is.
Look at that smile, man. I just want to kiss this man. Anyway,
Yeah, the super chat, the chat is lighting up. They all love this discussion. We got a lot of people who have asked some really great questions. Jean-Francois Charlie Baugh, sorry if I'm sure I'm mispronouncing your name, but he says, Mr. E, first, you are a true model of integrity. I agree. You said that governments may be aware of UAP since the 30s from an event in Italy. Has no group of scientists ever tried in nearly a century to establish communication with an intelligence behind the tech?
Boy, that is a great.
Yeah,
super chat.
I'm trying to think about. You know who would be better to? We should have Hal Puthoff on this.
Yes, please.
And that would be the guy. Him and Kit Green and a few others and Eric Davis. Those guys would be perfect to answer that question. I'm going to politely punt.
Ooh. Okay, all right.
As
That's
you
cool.
punt,
Next,
Lou, if you could keep in
That's
mind
fair.
just setting up the email between all of us to set up those interviews for those folks, we'd appreciate that.
Oh yeah, no, Lou followed me on Twitter. We're in. It's official.
Forgot. Yes.
Yeah. So I mean, from one Cuban to another, bro. That's it. Like, and now I'm really in there. Yeah.
I got you.
Okay, what's our next question, my friend?
So Mav, great friend of the show, she asked, there's a paper shared by Christopher Mellon on 527 showing a correlation between UAPs and eco-contamination. She's wondering, did ATIP investigate this? And are there any metrics on contamination before and after a UAP event? And are variables like nuclear
We got a good
warships
crowd
in there?
We got a good crowd out there. Yeah.
Guys, man, you're asking fantastic questions. Holy smokes. That is something that we're certainly looking at. Look, anything that flies in our atmosphere, anything that interacts with our environment, changes the environment ever so subtly. Okay. And sometimes not so subtly, right? So obviously we want to be able to detect if there's any type of trace elements, residue, something that might be left behind. Yes, there is some data to suggest, especially as it deals with radiation, that there is some traceable signature left behind. Again, I want to be very, very careful not to go too far down that rabbit hole because there may be ongoing efforts to further explore that, and I don't want to do anything to maybe compromise those efforts. But that's true not just in the UAP topic. That's true anytime there's some sort of new technology being developed by a foreign adversary or we do it. It should be no surprise that we are interested to try to collect anything and everything we can. Those signatures are like a fingerprint, if you will, that's left behind, and that's very, very valuable because you can assess a lot of things to include capabilities and loiter time and whatnot and speeds, sometimes by what's left behind.
Yeah, that's a great answer, and we appreciate all these breadcrumbs you can give us. Kevin Childress had another question, which was on my mind as well.
Oh,
he asked,
Kevin's a great guy.
Yeah. He asked, why do you think paranormal events seem to afflict experiencers?
I paranormal events. Let me, if I may, I'm not an expert in paranormal events, but what I can say is that scientifically, by definition, everything is technically paranormal until it's no longer until it is normal. Okay, paranormal simply means outside or beyond what we consider to be the standard of if there is a standard of normalcy, right? And so para means outside of that. But this cell phone right here, 100 years ago, would certainly be considered paranormal. The fact that we're having a conversation like this over airwaves separated by thousands of miles in between each other would certainly be considered paranormal back then. And so my point is everything by definition in the scientific community is paranormal until it becomes normal. So as far as the UAP phenomenon, if we want to use that and say that the UAP phenomenon is paranormal, then sure, because we don't understand it yet. I'll subscribe to that. But if we start going down the road of spiritual, paranormal, and poltergeists and ghosts and all the other Bigfoots and things like that. Again, I'm not saying no. What I'm simply saying is we don't have enough data yet to substantiate any of that. So rather than spend what little time I have bandwidth left, I tend to try to focus on that data that I can quantify and qualify. Not that other information isn't interesting. It is, but I simply don't have enough hours in the day to go down that because it's too subjective. There's the evidence is purely from a person's point of view. And I don't have radar data on ghosts. I don't have anything, telemetry that I can put my finger on and say, yes, that is real. So I remain focused on the more nuts and bolts side of the house.
That makes sense. Yeah, we don't totally have the tools, but kind of speaking of tools and technologies, Brian W. asks another great question here. And so he says, personally, I think one of the most exciting things to come out of all this would be humanity's realization of what is possible technology-wise. My question to Louise is, what do you think would be one of the biggest positives to come from full disclosure?
Oh, man, that's another super question. Man.
I know our audience is
we got a killer audience.
Wow.
Like, share, subscribe.
If we can learn to focus on the 90% of commonalities we have as a human species instead of focusing on the 10% differences, that would be, for me, the greatest accomplishment. Yes, I mean, one can argue, yes, what if we have the ability to evolve technologically millions of years in a single generation? Yeah, that's great, and improve humanity. But even more important than that for me is the ability for us to come together as a society, as a civilization, and as a species. And for the first time, truly put our differences aside and our fears, and instead focus on our commonalities, and then move together, progress together as a species.
Good answer.
What else you got, rather? Anything else?
So here's a good one from Zofa. This is an unofficial question. So if you want to answer unofficially and off the record, that's perfectly fine. They ask, what do you think a non-human entity piloting such a craft might look like? And this is, don't tell us from evidence. Just tell us, maybe what's on your mind, what you imagine.
Look, if nature has taught us one thing, there's a great deal of variety in the universe, but there's also some fundamental rules that everything abides by. Everything. So when you look at the world of fractal, you realize that from the neural connections in our brains to the blood capillaries in our bodies to the path lightning takes in the sky to the way water flows down a mountainside to the large Magellanic, the large supercluster galaxies in the universe that are millions of light years in distance, they all follow the same pattern. When you look at fractals and when you see that commonality, both biologically and in the physical world and in the cosmological world, that means there's something there. That means there's a blueprint. That there's a hidden key to the universe. And interestingly enough, that pattern isn't just in the physical world. When you look at human relationships, and you do, for example, even a link diagram of a terrorist network, you still see that same pattern. And so when you have that pattern repeating itself from a psychological perspective, from a physiological perspective, from a universal perspective, you have to realize that there are certain things that are common throughout the universe. For example, maybe radial symmetry, right? So if you look at a human being and you say, we have nothing in common with a starfish, yet I have a head, 2 arms, and 2 legs radiating from a central point. Well, so does a starfish. And if you look at my hand, I have 5 fingers radiating from a central point, right? And if you look at my feet, I have 5 toes radiating from a central point. All animals have that symmetry, right? And so, I mean, not all animals, of course, but a large majority do. So maybe if there is some sort of intelligent life out there or non-intelligent life, that they share that radial symmetry, because this is really, when I put my hand up, this is a fractal. You're starting here. It's just like a tree. When you look at the hand, it's the same pattern that a tree takes, that the veins on the leaves take. This is a common. You're looking at one of the rules of the universe, and we all have it. So maybe, again, without answering specifically what one might look like, there may be some commonalities that we share across the cosmos with other life forms.
Yeah, that's very interesting. Maybe speaking about those kind of rules of the universe, we got another question. I'm sorry, I forgot who this was from, but the question was, so you shared intelligence regarding the retrieval of exotic materials and biomaterials. In your opinion, is there a possibility that we might have found a written language embodied in exotic materials? And if so, in your opinion, could we hope to read it?
Ooh.
Well,
and that'll be the final question, I think. Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's go to what written language is. Okay. Written language is nothing more than a form of communication. And just like we're having this conversation now, I'm using my voice to communicate a thought. When I use a pen, I'm using a pen to communicate a thought. So written communication is a tool that allows us to communicate with each other without using our ears, right? Our ears are used for verbal language, or we use our eyes to decipher written language, okay? But at the end of the day, it's just communication. There are all sorts of ways to communicate with an individual, with a person, even an animal, a dog, a cat, a bird, right? If you see a dog looking at you and it starts snarling its teeth, it's communicating an intent. Okay. And that intent, you know damn well what it is. Okay. Even though a dog is a completely different species and the brain is wired different than ours, we can still interpret that communication. Just like if I'm across the hall and I go like this to you, I wave to you, I'm communicating with you. Okay. I may not be speaking or saying, hey, what's up there? But what I'm doing is communicating an acknowledgement. Hey, I'm here. You're there. I see you. What's up? Right. So as far as written language, we have to presume that anything that uses a written language, it's a logical presumption, not a fact, but it'd be a logical presumption that written language is there because an animal is using eyes, visual cues to communicate. Okay. That's what written language is used for. Otherwise, it's useless. You have to be able to see in order to understand written language, unless you're talking Braille. But that's not written language. That's a texture language, right? That's a tactile language.
Yeah.
So, is it possible that there are other species that have eyes like ours, complex and compound eyes with cones and rods, and they communicate that way? Well, when you look at all the species on Earth, a large majority of species, now we're not talking about microbial species, I'm talking about larger complex species, species with a vertebra, have eyes. That seems very common, whether it's a snake on the ground or it's a bird in the sky or a fish in the sea or a human being, right? The eyes have been with us as an evolution from a very early stage of organism development on this planet. It is part of a lot of complex species, most species, in fact. So it's probably not uncommon for us to presume, if it's so common here on this planet, it may very well be common for another life form, if another life form exists. And so therefore, again, I know I'm not answering your question directly because I have to be careful. I'm not going to go into specifics, but is it possible that there is written language for another species? Yeah, it actually could be quite probable. And so the question is, we have to speak the language, right? Symbols on the side of a desk can mean all sorts of things. I have a flag up here that's a symbol, right? There's no written words on it, but you know what it means, right? Well, if I was an alien species coming down here and I saw that for the first time, I would have no idea what the hell that means, right? There wouldn't be that symbology behind it. So we have to be very careful when we talk about written language, because what we consider written language may in fact not be written language at all. It may be actually something else.
Wow. Well, I saw my producer in the back room going, yes, yes, I love it. So
on behalf of the audience, thanks for all those answers, Lou. That was amazing.
Thank you, Lou. And
listen, let me caveat. They weren't answers; they were responses.
Right.
Please. I don't want people thinking Lou's got all the answers, because Lou doesn't have all the answers. Yeah. It was a response. You asked me. I gave you my personal opinion. In some cases, those opinions were informed by observation.
And
we
yeah, we're,
appreciate
you know,
it.
yeah, no, we really appreciate it because these are the fun conversations to be had. Just as long as it's always brought back to that terra firma that I had said before. You know what we know, and then anything past that, underneath that, pure
Right.
speculation. But we could always come back to terra firma. So, Mr. Elizondo, Lue Elizondo, my friend, thank you so much for coming aboard, getting weird with us here. We got a Father's special coming up in July.
Yes, we do.
Hopefully that works out where your dad, my dad,
is.
and the two of us are going to sit down, have a panel discussion about
We are.
nothing to do with UFOs or UAPs. We're going to get to know Lue Elizondo, where he came from, who his family is, how he was raised, all of this, why he's got the
gonna
mentality these guys can be
arroz
killed.
con pollo.
Arroz
We're
con
gonna talk
pollo,
about
croquetas.
Croquetas, man.
Yeah.
Churros. We're going to go into
Cabecito,
That's right.
all of it, man, dude. I cannot wait, man.
Tacanitos, yeah.
And listen, I know it's Friday. I know you got some beers in the cooler, so go enjoy those beers. We really, really appreciate your time. And again, thank you. Thank you. You're welcome to come back anytime you want. You got something to say. You got something to talk about. The door is always obviously open for you, sir.
Gentlemen, it is my sincere pleasure, and I think we're going to be doing a lot of working together in the future. This is a joint endeavor. This is a mutual effort by everybody, and most importantly, your audience. Without the audience, there is no you, and without you,
Right.
I can't do my job either. So the most important linchpin in this entire equation is your audience, and so thank you sincerely to every single person out there. I'm sorry I couldn't get to everybody's questions, but the ones you asked were fantastic, and I really looking forward to doing this again. And thank you all very much for tuning in. This was really special for me. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Lou. All right, sir.
pleasure, Lou.
We'll
Thank
see you
you.
later. You can back out as you see fit, and yeah, thank you.
You got
Thanks.
it, guys.
Thanks
Take
a lot,
care.
Lou. Bye-bye.
Over
Have a
and
great
out.
day.
Love it.
Man.
What a cool dude. All right, so we went a half hour long, and we've got guests who are here to join we're going to analyze now the conversation we just had with Lue Elizondo. What were the coolest things said? What were the dumbest questions asked by me? We're going to talk about all of it. I think we're probably going to add another 15, maybe half hour onto the end of the show. So I think we're going to extend the show because we got some really great guests in the chat. But before we get to those guys who are waiting in the wings, I just want to remind everybody, if you haven't already, like, subscribe, hit the share button. Make sure you visit our Patreon down below. It's in the Linktree description. Like Lou said, you're the audience. You guys help us create this show. You help finance the show. The Patreon is free to everyone. Basically, anyone can be a Patreon member. There's no hidden access. We don't delay shows here on this channel. Everything comes to you as we create it. So it doesn't matter if you pay $0 on the Patreon or you pay $500,000, which is an actual tier. See if you got the guts, please. Somebody out there might.
Somebody's got the guts. I guarantee it.
Somebody in the world has the guts to finance this show forever. Okay.
And I just wanted to say quickly before we pop in our guests. So we go live 5 nights a week. So if you guys weren't aware, right here on this channel, if you haven't subscribed yet, make sure you subscribe, hit the bell, because we're here live 3 days a week, Monday, Wednesday, and Friday at 7 p.m. Eastern, 4 p.m. Pacific. We also go live on the Singularity Lab, where we switch topics slightly, talking more about technology, science, and where humanity is headed in the future. We've got a lot of futures, a lot of space, a lot of cool stuff over there. So if you haven't followed the Singularity Lab, make sure you click the link in the description. You can click my link tree and then go click and follow the Singularity Lab as well. But don't go anywhere. We've got a full hour right here with a full panel to discuss the Lue Elizondo conversation.
All right, so let's bring him on. Speaking of,
bring him on.
So first guy up is going to be Mr. Joe Murgia. Joe's also known as UFO Joe. He's a friend of the program and has been independently investigating the UFO UAP phenomena and is in the paranormal for the last 25 years. Joe, welcome back to the show. Thank you for being here. He's also an insanely great note taker. So I can't wait till we get into those. And then up next, we've got one of my favorite people on the planet, Mr. Jamarl Thomas. He's a political analyst and host of Fault Lines on Radio Sputnik in Washington, D.C. On 105.5 FM and the YouTube channel by the same name. So if you want some progressive, middle of the road politics that calls out both sides, you need to go listen to this guy's show. It is phenomenal. And then last but not least, I got Alex Sears. You know what? Alex Sears is the chief correspondent, UFO correspondent for the Daily Caller, and has researched UAPs for several years. Alex is experienced in the political realm and is very familiar with the inner workings of Washington, D.C. Gentlemen, welcome to the post Lue Elizondo discussion. Where do we start? Joe, let's start with you, because you're the intense note taker here. And I always love watching your Twitter as people are getting interviews. So what'd you think? How'd we do? I'm sorry. I know you had a question. I'm sorry I didn't get it in there. There were so many questions that we had, but past that, I hope you forgive me.
You're forgiven, Lou.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
First off, Lou is talking about poltergeist and there's not enough data, but Dr. Eric Davis said, it was on Coast to Coast in 2018, he said poltergeist phenomenon is always attached to UFO encounters. It's something that's not very well understood or recognized by many in ufology. Every time you have UFOs, you're going to have poltergeist associated with them. So
interesting.
So he has data. I don't know what data he has that Lou doesn't have.
Can I ask a question, just because I've had an experience and I didn't think of any poltergeists or remember any. When you say it happens every time, does that mean it happens at the same time, or it could happen a day later, 2 days later?
Yeah, there's nothing more.
Yeah, there's no specifics.
I will try, communicate with him. I'll try to get more on that.
Yeah.
The other thing is, Lou, as far as Sheehan is still representing Greer. He has not stopped representing Greer.
Okay.
For me, that's not a problem. The problem is when we heard that Stephen Greer went on live and did a live cast and said, well, Daniel Sheehan came to me and said that Luis Elizondo had seen an extraterrestrial craft in a government facility. And Lou has, on 2 occasions, denied that he said that. But that's a problem. If your lawyer is going to the other client and saying, by the way, you're not going to believe what this guy just said, that's a major problem. Everything else I don't have a problem with. Especially Sheehan is actually, he came out and said, I do not think there's a fake alien invasion, which I was so happy to hear because I'd never heard him say that. And he goes, there may be a good group here, there may be a bad group here. We need to find out, which I love. We don't know who's here. So that was a good thing to hear from him.
Awesome. I would say, the only thing is that we don't know if Greer's lying when he says that. There's no definitive proof whether or not that Sheehan actually went to Greer and said that. As far as I'm going to go ahead and make the assumption, and maybe I might be called an ass later, but I have a feeling Greer probably made that up.
Only problem with that is Lewis already said that Sheehan misunderstood the conversation. That tells me right then that Sheehan did say that to Greer. He just got it wrong.
Interesting. That's interesting. Yeah. I wonder.
And I'm not a Greer fan. I think Greer did amazing work in 2001.
Same.
But now it's like, I have major problems with a lot of this stuff.
Jamal, I always love your introspective mind, sir. What did you think, if you got to catch any of it? I know you got a show. You got busy stuff to do, but what are you thinking? Oh, can't hear you, my man.
Sorry. Yeah, I was able to catch a pretty good part of it. I want to get to the Greer piece for a moment. That's the part of the UFO community that most fascinates me. Because Greer, for the amount of work that he did back in the 2000s, and these days he comes across as, I don't want to say pariah, that's too strong, but it seems that the UFO community views him as something else. It's like something distinct. For Sheehan,
can I say false prophet?
Is that what it is? I mean,
I don't know.
That people are pushing. I mean,
it feels that way a little bit.
Because Sheehan, I mean, for Greer to come out and basically say the universe is only full of good aliens, and that the only bad aliens are really the government that's pretending and framing aliens, and then for Sheehan to represent him, it's like, okay, Sheehan's representing him. And then for he comes out and makes a video basically saying Sheehan is representing Elizondo only to get him to come out and tell the truth about this alien invasion stuff. And Sheehan is like, I don't buy that. It's like, okay, so what's true here? Like, what's taking place here? Something very bizarre
Yeah, well, that's why I was kind of pressing him on the, don't you see how this is kind of sending conflicting messages a little bit? It's an optics issue.
Like you are what is it? Disinformation agent. Like that's what
Greer's saying.
Your close friend is saying that the guy you're representing is a literal disinformation agent that's there in order to screw people over about the false alien attack. And it's
Sheehan's no longer representing Greer, right?
No, Joe said he is.
As far as I know, he is. I've never heard him say that he's not.
That's what I mean. That's so weird. How does that work?
It's weird. Yeah, that's what I mean. Well, I mean, look, can an attorney have two clients at the same time?
Yeah.
Yeah, but can those clients be in the metric?
Right. Like, that's a thing.
I don't think there's another option as far as a lawyer who's so well versed in this subject and the constitutional law background. So it's like, I think if he had an option, he might take it. I don't think he has much of an option.
And maybe what the catch is, Sheehan is intellectually, I don't know, flexible enough to say Greer believes that there's going to be an alien attack. I don't buy that. That's what Greer believes. Right. Elizondo, who was behind it, believes it. He may even be that. I mean, think about how lawyers can engage. It's like a black lawyer, defending a Klansman. It's like his right to the, he has the right to law or whatever else.
Yeah.
It could be something like that. I don't know.
I mean, I'd like to get Alex and Jamarl's perspective, because both of you guys are in DC. Both of you guys are very close to the political world. Is there really not another constitutional lawyer out there that they could have approached that maybe just doesn't have the baggage that Sheehan's bringing to the table?
Maybe not that has the knowledge and the background and the willingness to move forward with some kind of case within the UFO movement or just the disclosure movement in general. Certainly no one that has the understanding that Sheehan has, being a proponent of this for decades at this point.
Right.
So they'd have to find someone that hasn't really talked about it. And then convince that person to basically come out publicly and be like, yeah, I'm hitching my trailer to this train, and we're riding it into town. And that could possibly be insurmountable, which, would be why it would just be easier to be like, yeah, sure. Maybe Sheehan has a little bit of baggage with the Greer thing, but he's the best we got. And so we'll roll with him.
And Sheehan has no F to give. I mean, that's what it seems like. He is a full-blown believer. And I mean, it's like, I'm not quite sure. Not to mention the Pentagon Papers and everything else. I mean, that's where I knew Sheehan from. I didn't even know Sheehan was part of the UFO stuff until like a year or two ago. Yeah. And so if you were looking for somebody who is an exceptional attorney, who knows the ins and outs, who, yes, has baggage, but definitely knows what he's talking about. And by the way, the baggage, in a legal sense, the baggage doesn't really apply. I mean, the baggage is more of a political thing. It's like,
it's more of the optics of it.
Some out there political beliefs. However, in the legal context, everything that he said in this is specific and legal and true. And so it's like, from the standpoint of him going after the IG, anybody and their mama can laugh on the outside, but in a legal context where they have to engage it with like a legal device. So there may be others. I don't know who they are.
And the other thing is, your average person isn't going to know, the difference between Greer and Elizondo. They're going to see, this person, Pentagon Papers, Watergate,
right?
UFO disclosure, Lue Elizondo. They're not going to see, Sheehan and their backdoor ties to Greer and all of the nonsense.
I guess the thing that kind of, Michael, I know there was a comment that you wanted to point out, right? Sorry to cut you off.
That's okay. Well, I wanted to point this one out because I don't know if this is true, but we should. If it is, this is interesting. Sheehan represents the Disclosure Project pro bono, not Greer personally. And then, in addition to that, as you guys were saying, the Pentagon Papers. If there is a greater disinformation effort from the United States government in history, than UFO disclosure, it's for damn sure the Vietnam War. And so Sheehan was the one responsible for exposing that. So I mean, that's huge. And if you want somebody, I mean, it's just it blows this little debate between Greer and Lue Elizondo out of the water. It becomes meaningless when you look at it in that context.
Yeah. Well, I also like what Alex said is he kind of brings yeah, just the experience and expertise to this that I don't think a lot of attorneys do have. And also, like, you're right, like, nobody knows the difference between these two guys outside of this, Twitterverse. So the optics, maybe the optics to me don't hit me right, but it doesn't matter to the 99.9% of everybody else because they're not going to know the difference. You're right. They're going to hear Pentagon Papers. They're going to be, they're going to see all of those accomplishments.
And I definitely see your point with the optics, 100%. Another thing about Sheehan is during the Carter administration, he was able to get access to the classified Blue Book files, and he saw pictures of United States Air Force personnel surrounding a downed craft, and there were symbols on the side. He took his yellow notepad, shined the image, I guess it was an old, I don't know how, the old microfilm, and he copied the image, and when he left, because he wasn't allowed to take notes, they told him, when he left, they said, Mr. Sheehan, can we see that notepad? He's like, oh no, I'm done. And they looked, but they didn't look at the inside cardboard back cover where he had it, and they let him go, and he got out with it. As far as I know, he has not shared that image.
Well, that's funny because that's what I wanted to bring up next about Sheehan. And you got that. At least I heard that story during the Disclosure Project, the mock congressional hearings on UFO disclosure. There was a moment in that, in that fucking 12-hour marathon where Sheehan is giving his speech, and it was it actually wasn't a speech. It was opening up to questions from a congresswoman, and so she asks him a question, and in the middle of him explaining, going on a tangent, she's like, stop talking. She's like, you need to boil this down for me to the simplest form. And she's like, you need to give me something that I can take to my constituency to start this conversation. All of this stuff you're saying, it doesn't matter to me. Like, that's what she basically said, And so, like, that, it just worries me. Like, when I saw that, I was like, man, how is he, if he can't give a quick, concise argument in front of a mock, congressional setting, what is he going to do in a courtroom? So that's why I was a little worried, and again, I could be 1,000,000% wrong on this. It was the optics that sort of hit me of it. I was like, man, I wish this was just another person but him.
Well, there's a difference between an ideological argument and a political argument, or ideological argument and a legal argument. And Sheehan, he's invested. And so it's not like this kind of dispassionate, I'm representing my client about blah, blah, blah. He has clear beliefs and ideas associated with the stuff when he talks about it.
So he's going to fight for it.
Yeah. So the hope becomes that doesn't end up in the conversation. As much as he knows, as great as it is about it, et cetera, you don't want that there. You want him making the argument necessary in order to get the next step or the ball rolling forward. So yeah, I don't know. I'm hoping he's not that way. I mean, I've seen him at lectures. I've seen him do his thing. By the same token, he has a clear a clear legal basis in regards to the way that he operates. So maybe there's a difference between him being in front of a congressional thing, just kind of doing his thing, talking and I'm talking about UFOs, something I care about greatly, versus him representing a client. Yeah. And so let's just hope. So no, I feel you on that. I've watched him give speeches on that stuff before, and it gets really spiritual really fast.
real fast. But then again, I mean, he is. He's also. I don't want to call him a religious lawyer, but he represents a lot of religious institutions, and he's started helped start these religious institutions to help defend themselves against discrimination. So it's like I can understand why he goes spiritual. But actually, the thing that got the Congresswoman was when he was like, "This is a spiritual thing. This is something that a congregation can understand." She's like, that is something I could take to my constituency. And
no,
I was like,
it's not. That's
well, it depends on the constituency.
No, it depends on, but it depends on the constituency, though, right?
What we're saying for the moment, like you have these deep, what we're going to say, the institutions of religion in the country, like extremely steep religious institutions, and they're going to say, do those aliens believe in Jesus? Do those aliens believe in God? Are those aliens capitalists? I'm telling you, this is what's coming up. They're not going to have any concept of this in a religious space. Like try to explain it to them. It's not. It is going to come across as sacrilegious to explain it in religious terms. It has to be in scientific terms. I just don't buy the religious argument flies for something like this. Our institutions are too ingrained in this world.
Well, let me ask the panel this question: If say congressional hearings happened, what do you think the best format would be? Would it be a 12-hour thing spread out over 4 days, or should it be something that should be like a presentation done in an hour and a half tops? Because like I was watching the Disclosure Project, and the thing that struck me was like all of these senators and former congressmen look lost, bored. Some of them look annoyed because the information is so. Look, it's not that the information's bad. It's just too much. It's so much. And I think we need to just like, if I wanted to see congressional hearings, I would want it to be the simplest, most concrete things told by the most concrete, credible people and put on the table in a quick, simple format that a senator who's got to go spend 75% of their day making phone calls for money will actually sit down and process. So, like, what do you guys think? What do you think would be the best format to maybe do a congressional hearing in 2021 or 2026?
Well, I mean, I'll speak quickly on this, and I'll turn it over to the panel. But I've seen these debates go on in Congress for so long, and it's the exact same thing every single time. They're always bored. They're always it's either an ideological debate, or it's complete boredom, and it just depends on which side is up to bat, and that's the unfortunate thing. So I'd love to see something short, but that's just not the way it's done. You're going to see a long, drawn-out, boring experience. It's not going to be great.
It doesn't have to be that way, though. I mean, if you pique the interest of the people involved in the beginning, like if you like a fishhook, like kind of like all right, I'm going to have a movie, and then this very long movie is 3 hours. How do I get the movie started? Okay, I'm going to have this guy running through the streets and get shot, and
you know who I think starts that movie? Alex Dietrich. You bring a woman, a former pilot, who's a woman, who's a badass lady, and you have her come in, and she's the first person to tell these congressmen and congresswomen what's going on. I think that's a great way to start a movie.
If there's a video, if there's I don't know. I guess my thought is you find it the best case that is like unrelenting, like just there's no way to fundamentally explain this in regular terms. Even if you want to say that, okay, that's secret tech or whatever else, fair enough. We can't explain this in ordinary terms. Start there. Let that be the first one, where at the very least, when people are talking about it, it's the question that starts off everything else. I mean, I don't know if the hearings, like, I agree with you. 12 hours is intense. And there's an argument to be made that there's a huge amount of dense material for people to go through, et cetera, and everything else. But the people aren't going to care about that. Not in the beginning. I think what people are going to care about is, okay, oh my God, look at this big case that they can't explain. That would be my suggestion. What do you guys think?
I think you're right, Jamal. I think 12 hours is too much. It's not feasible. I think if we can get an hour and a half to 2 hours, maximum 3 witnesses. And what that means is the Pentagon will send somebody who's briefed on the report, and then you want to call a pilot. You want to call either Alex Dietrich or Fravor, and then probably Lue. And I think because it's in front of the Senate Intelligence Committee and Marco Rubio and Mark Warner, the two heads from opposing parties who are the member and the ranking member of the Senate Intelligence Committee, I think they take this seriously enough to where they're not going to entertain any nonsense during a hearing like this. So every senator is going to have their 5 minutes. Every witness is going to have their 5-minute opening statement, and they'll truck through. And what's good about the 2-hour version of a hearing is it's much more digestible to the public, right? Nobody wants to sit through the 12 hour. I had to sit through 2 hearings just this week. It was horrible. I hate it. I want to gouge my eyes out. It's awful. I don't wish that on anybody. It's horrible.
So who's responsible for that, Alec? Who's responsible for actually setting the ground rules for these hearings so that you can actually have something like this the way Jamarl described?
Yes. So that would be the ranking member and the chair of the committee. So that would be Mark Warner and Marco Rubio. Rubio's the acting chairman.
Oh, man. If we could get Rubio on this show, that would be
Rubio is
suggestion
trying to
number
use
1.
this going into the midterms and the presidency in 2024. Like his
Yeah,
thing
definitely.
is, I mean, the reporting is that Rubio is like, all right, I'm going to ride or die. And
You know
because
why?
in his head, there's something in our airspace. We don't know what it is. And so that's a credible thing that we need to talk about. I mean, he's putting his neck out on some level, on whether or not there's a there. I mean, if the report came out and they gut him, what does Rubio say? Like how do they? The wild part to me is always, how do you step back the claims? Elizondo was studying this stuff. You have Rubio coming out saying, yeah, there's a lot of stuff behind the scenes. We've been briefed. You have D&I Ratcliffe coming out saying, yeah, I've been briefed. There's a lot of stuff behind the scenes. And you have other people saying, yeah, I've viewed the videos. It's expressive. How does the Senate, or how does the report come out and say, yeah, there's nothing to see here, folks? And what does it mean for the people who came out and said that stuff? Like, it's very weird. It seems like there's this, I don't know, this weird push and pull where there are forces trying to determine what comes out and what doesn't. And that it's like, all right, we're willing to give you something. So there's going to be some evidence that comes out. We'll give Jeremy Corbell a video or so, and we'll give this information. But from the standpoint of where Lue is going with it, where he is like basically screaming to high heaven that there's a lot more, etc. Maybe they don't want that. Maybe lose a loose edge where they're like, okay, we need to mitigate that loose end, that loose thread that is running around screaming to high heaven. However, we're willing to let some come out. It's hard to know. I am uber curious about why. And I don't know if any of you guys have any insight or take on why now and why the level of I guess you could say, urgency associated with it by simultaneously putting a knife in the Lue. Well, both of those things are happening together. It's very strange.
One thing about Rubio is Sheehan was on, I don't know if it was Spaced Out Radio or it was the Grant Cameron panel, and Rubio said that, Sheehan said that Rubio is so talkative about this because he was privately briefed. This is what Sheehan said. He was privately briefed by Eric Davis saying the UAP Task Force and the ONI, Office of Naval Investigation, believe that these objects are UAP. And I checked into that, and I believe that is true. So that was what was told to Rubio. So that's why Rubio, I think he wants to push for 2024, make this a big part of his platform. Whether or not he takes it further during a hearing, I don't know. But as far as a hearing, if it's just verbal, just people talking, I think it should be short, like Alex said. But if there are videos that they're going to be showing,
it needs to be a video. There has to be a video.
If there are amazing videos of them making 90-degree turns, and we have the pilots on top of that, and at the very end, Lue says, ladies and gentlemen, I have a surprise for you. Walk out to the Capitol parking lot. We have the Roswell craft waiting for you to check it out. Then it can go for 12 hours.
That would be a great 12-hour congressional hearing.
I think it's interesting because of this push and pull to control the narrative, like you were bringing up. There's this idea because you've got Elizondo out there who is a bit of a loose cannon when you think about what Susan Goff and the DOD wants to reveal. And people always say, well, why does it matter? Why will people be upset if you disclose this information to them? And the reality is, if we are nothing, this is what we talked about with Lue earlier, this idea that if these things may not be directly hostile, they purely may be thinking of us the way we think of cattle. And if that's the case, that's horrifying to people. We are so used to being on the top of the food chain. We've been on top of the food chain for a long time, or so we thought. And if we're not, if that comes to light and that's a reality, that's going to be really scary for people. And Big Brother government can't be responsible for allowing you to think that. It's got to make you think it's in control.
Yeah.
I don't necessarily think that Rubio's really doing this for political reasons. I don't think he's going to incorporate this to a 2024 run. I really don't. I don't see a.
You think he's just a true believer for this stuff?
I do. I don't necessarily see any kind of real benefit with the average person because for us we can see a benefit because we've been immersed in the UFO community and UFOlogy and the research for years now. But for Citizen Joe who just wants to raise his cows and sow his wheat, he doesn't care. And so it's not a politically winning idea for the masses, for the tiny little subset of the masses that is us, sure, but that's not what you build a platform on.
But can I ask you this? Can I ask you this, Alec? Do you think that there are so many people in the closet when it comes to this phenomena, that when a politician actually starts to speak out about it, it will resonate in a far greater way than you could ever imagine.
I don't think people are in the closet about it as much as we think they are. I think people just don't know, because as we saw with the 60 Minutes hit, people were talking about it at the water cooler for the first time ever, and they were talking about as if like, oh, we didn't know about this. Like, I knew that people have been talking for UFOs a little bit more the past few years, but they didn't know how immense and how they didn't even know about the footage really. Yeah. So I do political communications for a living. Like, it's my job to like plan out communication campaigns like this and plan political campaigns, and I don't see running on disclosing UFOs as a winning strategy.
Right. That's what that's why I think it doesn't make sense politically to do it. It just, I feel like his constituencies are going to be like, what the hell are you doing? Especially in Miami. Maybe like in Miami, they're going to be like, get the fuck out of here with that shit. Like, it's just no way, dude. Like, I mean, he's a pipe, he's a lightning rod in Florida, even in Florida, I mean, he wins by, I think, pretty small margins. So it's a political risk for him is the more than anything. And so that's why I think it adds so much levity. And when you try to explain that to Mick West, it's like, what's the advantage of that? He's like, well, his constituency's not going to care. How could you even say that? Have you ever been to Miami? Like, I grew up there. You go, yes, his constituencies, it's a Catholic Cuban-run city. What are you talking about? It's not politically savvy, and he is politically savvy.
It is a risk, but it's this kind of a risk-reward thing.
Oh,
I mean, I agree
with
you. Alec, I agree with you that from the standpoint of, like, there's no, like, saying, I'm going to disclose UFOs, vote, 2024, vote me in or Marco Rubio. I don't necessarily think it works like that. So I agree with you. That's a fair point. From a national security standpoint, I don't know. I mean, because Marco Rubio does seem to be lashed into this issue, and I consider him a political actor. Like, and maybe I am wrong in my assessment. Like, because to me, political actors are political actors, whether they're talking about UFOs or whether they're talking about taxes. And is there something that goes deeper into the human being when the human being realizes or knows that he's not alone? I don't know. Meaning, it's an environment just different now. And so that's a fair point to make. I mean, maybe I'm too cynical about this stuff and thinking about the reason that they function. What do you think, Alec? I mean, what's your take on that? I mean, is it really that Rand Paul learns about UFOs and then Rand Paul is not a libertarian anymore? He thinks people should get healthcare now. Or is it something above it all where they're like, humanity is not alone, I have to go beyond my typical politics, etc. See, my thing is, I don't think that faculty is going to kick in. Or if that faculty is in, it lasts only for a few years, in which case these guys get back to their business as usual and, find out how they're going to use experience for their own ends. What is your take on that, Alec? I'm curious.
Well, so far, the issue hasn't been politicized. It is so far a political issue. Yes, we have political figures involved because government is involved, obviously. But like I said before, nobody's ran on hey, we're going to get UFOs disclosed. There was a little bit of that during Hillary Clinton's 2016 run with John Podesta, but it didn't go anywhere, obviously. But
they do run on national security. They do run on national defense. And so that's the thing that I always wonder, because he never talks about disclosure. He never talks about UFOs. He talks about, we've got these weird things in our airspace that are threatening us. And that is politically activating.
Right.
It can be, but is that, is he doing that for a political reason, or is he doing that because that's all he's been briefed on is from the Pentagon? They're talking about it as if it's a threat because that's what Lue Elizondo was saying. That's what the Pentagon talks about. But I just to get back to Jamal's question, I don't think necessarily that the existence of UFOs will force anyone to change their political positions. Honestly, I don't really think it's going to do very much to anyone's worldview. On some large scale, yes, people will have a brief moment of panic, and unless some extraterrestrial race landed on the White House lawn, came out and said, "Hello, we are inviting you to join us on a galactic scale. Here are all these other races, and like here's all this free technology now that you can have." I don't think anyone's worldview is going to be changed. There will be a brief 2-week period of freak out where people are panicking, and then things just go back to normal. Because that's what people do. That's what people do after every single.
Show a craft, even if we get to see a craft and bodies, maybe you think that won't change things?
I think it might, but again, because we don't have a constant presence, because there's not some alien ambassador coming in and saying constantly, "Hey, we're here, we're here, we're here, we're here, we're here. Hey, by the way, we're here." People will just kind of like, "Okay, well, it's there." That doesn't change my day to day. It doesn't change the fact that I'm going to go to work at 9 and leave at 5 and go home, and I have to put the food on the table.
That's such a great point. And there's a huge spectrum, right? Like you guys both brought up these massively different spectrum. One is disclosure, some sort of disclosure. We're going, there's something in the sky. We don't know what it is, but it's there. And then you have aliens on the White House lawn, and then there's everything in between. And I think it's in that spectrum that we can define where people what behaviors will change. But if it is that extraordinary, we are part of a galactic federation. You're damn right, everything's going to change. But if we don't get there, who knows?
Well, my really good friend of mine, her name's Samantha Jack. She's a writer and she's a great actress, really, really funny girl. And she was on the show. She was like my first or second guest ever. And we were talking about, I'm like, what would it take for you to pay attention to this? Because she was kind of wowed. I showed her the Nimitz and the Tic Tac. She'd never seen it before. And she's like, Lou, she's like, I guess what it would take, it would be I would want to know, do the aliens, if you wearing they really hate green backpacks, that's information that I want to know. If they hate green backpacks, I want to know that. But outside of that, I really don't care,
threat.
Correct. Yeah. She wants to know if there's something she needs to do to prepare. But past that, I don't think it would, to say what, Joe, I think if they come out with a craft tomorrow, I think it would be 2 weeks, 3 weeks where everybody would be like, holy shit, did you guys see we have alien craft, the bodies? They would go crazy. But I think it's just I think the closest thing I could relate to this would be 9/11. After 9/11, right, there was a period where maybe people didn't go to work. They were depressed. They were whatever. Maybe they lost a family member. Right. It was a huge American moment. But guess what? I think almost the next day, some people were like, time to get back to work. Time to get back to work. We got to rebuild this. We got shit to do. We can't sit here and feel sorry for ourselves. And it's what Alex said. It's hey, man, I got to put food on the table. Great. There's an alien craft. Awesome.
People do have to put food on the table, but the world never went back to normal. Your world right now is still living in the context of 9/11. 1,000 Iraqis got killed. We're still in those countries today. Afghanistan, the U.S. had been lying. And by the way, what did that turn into? That turned into the U.S. basically using that as a reason and justification to stay in the Middle East for 20-something years. Right. It was used for military reasons. It wasn't used for this. Okay, we got to get rid of terrorism and we have to stop it. It wasn't that. It was something else. And so it's so when people, I don't know if people do go back to normal like that, though. I mean, you're talking about something that is radically different. Yeah. You are not alone in the universe, period. Yeah. And not just that, there's something in your skies that is indicative of whatever that is, that meaning showing you're not alone. I think government gets involved. I think this notion of military gets involved. I think science radically changes. What do you mean there's something in our skies? There's something got here. And scientists started realizing that, hey, this equation that we didn't really have an answer to. Okay, there's an answer for Q or for X. And now we just need to solve it for X. But all of these sciences, physics, all of this stuff gets changed. What does it mean for theology? Yeah. I get it.
I think you're right though, but I think it's also just like 9/11. It's going to be a 25-year process for everybody to really grasp what the hell's going on. We used 9/11 to launch a war, and we didn't find out till officially anyway till a few years after it that it was it was a lie.
The human beings that are involved, people. Yes, we'll still go to work. People will still function and everything else. Right. But you're going to get governments. You're going to get all of these other
universities.
Institutions that change.
Right.
Like, and that change is going to be dramatic and it's going to be pretty significant. And look, I get that a lot of people might say, look, I got to put food on the table and everything else, but they are going to be engaged in an issue for the first time in their life forever, like forever.
Forever.
This notion of humanity being the center of the cosmos, not so much. All of
And
that
also-
stuff radically changes almost overnight. So I don't necessarily agree that it's like, all right, interesting. I do agree though that nobody's seeing an alien, and there's no alien ambassador saying, hey, this is what's going on. And so what you get is this kind of weirdness of humanity reconciling this new reality. And I don't necessarily think that's all that stabilizing. I think it's on some level going to be destabilizing. But I think the world changes.
Yeah, it also depends on the spectrum again, right? So it depends on the spectrum at which there is serious communication and contact with extraterrestrial species. So, you were talking about, going to work and making money and putting food on the table. But if we're given technologies that can change a lot of that, if we have unlimited energy supplies, if we can dramatically reduce our waste, if
Nobody's giving you technology, buddy.
Well, I'm saying there's a spectrum, right? So there's one spectrum. Yeah. No, I'm just saying there's one spectrum where we're making contact and there's a real connection and they're helping us evolve with our, and there's another spectrum where it's just we have things in our skies and they're avoiding us completely and they're not talking to us. But, you were making the point earlier, Lou, about your cousin who was only concerned about the defense aspect. But if there is greater contact, if there is greater communication, if there is greater cooperation, then that's a different story. And if I can go to vacation to Proxima Centauri B, because I now have, a friend who's an alien that lives on that exoplanet, then that's going to be a very different scenario than what we were talking about, from the other side of the spectrum.
I have to be honest, I would be very skeptical of anything that will give us technology like that. I mean, look, you guys ask me. I mean, tell me, how do you take that? I mean, from a rationality perspective, what does that look like in real terms?
We already have Dr. Eric Davis saying we have landed technology. So if that's true, then somebody has tried to give us technology. What are their motives? I don't know. I'm definitely skeptical. But as far as like who's here, if there's an announcement and we figure out, our best scientists say they're not extraterrestrial, they're interdimensional. They're all around us all the time. We just can't see them. They exist in the electromagnetic spectrum that we can't see. The reaction to that, as opposed to they're extraterrestrial and they're just here mining whatever, it may be a little different.
That's true. I mean, and also, like, I love how Lex Fridman thinks about this, and disclosure would be of any level would be phenomenal for all of us in this room. But the inspiration that it will instill in a kid, who finds out, like, can you imagine if we all found out at the age of 7, aliens are real, spacecrafts are visiting the planet? Like, that might inspire that kid to really go into a scientific direction and figure out the answer. I love that's what I love about it. But I agree. I think look, we're offering two different, I wouldn't say extremes, but like everything, I think there's an answer somewhere in the middle here. Like, I think it is going to have a profound effect on science, on children, on schools, on religion, and everything every aspect of what we do. But at the same time, it's like, there's going to be a part of us who'll be like, okay, cool. All right, so what, are we playing softball this weekend or what? Like, are we cracking some beers? Like, let's talk about this in the garage. Shout out to my boys, my UFO Garage Podcast boys. It's gonna be it's gonna be fun either way, unless it's just like Mars Attacks. It should be a fun time to be alive.
Seth brought that up in the chat, right? When we no longer thought that Earth was the center of the universe, was that the end of religion? No. Was that the end of softball, or whatever sport they were playing, in Galileo's time? No, it wasn't. They kept moving on. We kept living our lives.
Yeah. Well, shit, man.
I mean, yeah. Well, just
we solved it. We solved it. We're good. We got it.
When you guys were talking to Lou, did you get the feeling like that he? So I get the feeling that people always say what I think. I always say I think it's both. I think it's reasonable to think that we have some level of tech that might be 20 years ahead of whatever we have, and people are like, "Whoa, that thing can go so fast." But I think I don't think it's off the table of saying, "Well, maybe it's not us." And so, how much does Lue know? Sheehan said that Lue is not read in on any of this stuff. So, from his standpoint, it is not us in any measure, which is interesting, right? Because it poses this thing of people saying, okay, well, there's some things that are behaving in our sky that is phenomenal. Well, from Lue's standpoint, everything that he knows of, these things don't apply, even though some of those things may actually fit into stuff that we may have in our inventory that he doesn't know about. There's also the secondary aspect of the Pentagon and the Department of Defense. On an overt level, the Department of Defense has to explain how something is invading its airspace. That part is weird to me. Yeah. Like, if you think about it for the moment, the Department of Defense that is uber itchy about stuff. It's like, whoa. You know,
threat here, threat there, threat over there.
Yeah, right. We got to blow it out the sky, that type of stuff. They are engaging something daily. And their response to it is, okay, let's not, so what do they know? Yeah. Is it, okay, it's them on a high level and know it's them on a high level, so they just give it a pass? It's not them, in which case they know we can't do shit about it anyway, so we just give, we don't engage, but we know it's not a threat. Yeah. And from Lue's standpoint, he's looking at it as we don't have anything in the dresser, so this has to be something else. And why are these guys not reactive to it? I think that is a fascinating dynamic. I'll say for the moment that there is something that is some kind of black budget project that we have that's maybe doesn't rise to that level, but is there. On some weird space, we should still know. Like, if you think about it, let's say the West of the world are right, and the people like me are wrong, and that this is indeed terrestrial. Why shouldn't we know that? Like, that is still like that's still necessary to know. There are people on your planet that have technology that are doing things that are phenomenal, that are not under government control in the way that we would think of government control. And the element of government in the terrestrial sense hit their head on it. Yeah. And it's trying to expose it, even though they don't necessarily know what they're exposing. Now, Sheehan says that he knows that it's not us. He knows that, but he can't say it. That Elizondo is like, he wouldn't go there, but he knows it.
Well, you guys brought up 1930s and Mussolini, and Elizondo spoke about that with Max. We brought some of the pieces of a vehicle over here. Kit Green told me when I interviewed him that his parents had a sighting in 1930 of a craft coming out of a lake with multiple witnesses around the lake. I don't think that's our technology. So, and I've thought to myself,
not in the 30s.
Is not in the 30s,
Not in the 30s.
And I have thought to myself, I'm like, is it possible all of this is ours? Just to consider it, and I can't see how all of it is ours. Maybe I don't know how much of it, maybe some of it. I just don't know how much of it might be ours.
Yeah, it's feasible in this day and age that a chunk could possibly be, and oftentimes whatever chunk. Sightings are explainable. You can explain some of these things away, the everyday sightings, but not the stuff the military is encountering, not the Tic Tac incidents, not the 3 videos that we have, because they've just been poured over.
Especially with radio big data. That's the other part. Like, data is a big deal. Like, when people say, it's like, oh, dude, those videos are grainy. It's like, yeah, but it's not just the videos, it's the palettes. I mean, you have people people who you trust with billions of dollars of training are basically telling you this, and multiple. And it's like, oh, yeah, but those guys, they might be seeing swamp guy. He was engaged with it for multiple minutes. Yeah, but it might be.
It actively jammed his radar.
It's like you have to. You're stuck with this notion of, okay, let's say that 99% of it is something else. Okay, what's the 1%? And the one, that's an epic question. I agree with you on the Senate hearing stuff. It's like, if you're going to have hearings, it needs to be eye-popping enough for the public to be like, wow. Length and trying to, and look, I learned this for myself. Whereas, as a host of the show, I would be like, all right, producers, this is what you guys need to do. And I write this stuff out in the document, and they're like, oh, dude, this hurts. And it's like, make it 20 seconds. Like, all right, make it 20 seconds.
Right.
It's that. And so it's that part of it. Also, I'm really curious about what Elizondo can say. Does Elizondo still have his security clearances?
Yeah, we talked about that.
And if it was so, why does he need them? That's the other question that somebody mentioned.
He's a defense contractor.
He's a defense contractor.
So who does he work for?
We don't know.
Well, yeah, he doesn't want to say. He doesn't want to say.
Am I insane in asking that question?
No, it's not an insane question.
Because I was like, who's paying him? He's jumping around, going across. It's fair enough. and he's the Pied Piper for this. Fair enough. All right, who's employing you? Where you would need that clearance? That's, I think, a fair question. Also, the secondary thing of like when he answered questions, he can only answer them in the abstract, which is always interesting to me. And I didn't realize until after our interview, where he would say something like, imagine if it was a civilization back in time that got their hands on this piece of technology and they just used it to cut bread. It's like that. And it's like, is it like that? Okay, can you give me the specific case that we're talking about? But maybe he can't. Like maybe his end around of trying to get around like the national disclosure agreements and everything else is that. It was something I noticed after the fact. Like even in the end, when he was talking to you guys, and he made this kind of allegory as opposed to giving a specific instance that he's referring to. If you're giving me an allegory, there has to be a specific instance that you're referring to, right?
Right.
And so he's a very interesting cat to me, very affable, very easy to engage. I want to believe him, but I am massively distrustful of stuff like this. Like, because it's like you're so affable and you're so like easy to talk to. But is that part of the deception in some kind of weird way? Right. And I know it's not that I think deception, not in a sense. I just believe that when they're putting this information out, they're putting this out in this kind of choreographed way. That's all.
He was asked about his job, by the way. I'm sorry to interrupt.
Was he? What did he say?
What do you got, Joe?
All right, so the question during the Dolan interview said, Laura says, I'm wondering if you have ever or do you currently have any contractual agreements with any aerospace industries or defense contractors, such as, and she said DOCPER, which stands for the Department of Defense Contractor Personnel Office. And he said he wouldn't answer the question.
Yeah. Really?
I love
those questions.
He said, Laura, he goes, great question. He goes, yeah, I'm not prepared right now to discuss any affiliation that I might have with the U.S. government. Not because of me, but it's out of respect to the government. I've often said, if you want to know if I have any affiliation, ask the government. So,
nobody. You can't get out of that one. Because if the answer is no, it's just no.
Well, but here's the thing, Jamaro. We know he didn't deny the type of clearance that he has.
Right.
And the type of clearance that he has is a TSSCI clearance. And from my understanding, with that clearance, it's, and I could be wrong on this, speculating because I'm not a professional. I just heard this. But from my understanding is that's the kind of clearance that allows you access to a skiff.
Yeah.
And a skiff, if you can explain it, Jamaro, because I'm sure you probably have a much better explanation, but if you could explain what a skiff is.
Well, these are just like special operation projects, right? These kind of compartmentalized projects that certain people have access to and pretty much others don't. I mean, tell me if I'm wrong.
No.
I think you're talking about a SAP, a Special Access Program.
Special Access Project.
No, a sensitive compartmentalized information.
Well, that's a skiff where you can get information, but the actual program is a SAP. Is that what you mean?
No. I meant what Alex is saying. It's a room, essentially, like in the Pentagon, say, where you can go in, and it's a classified, secret, unconnected to anything clearance.
But DeLong said he had access to a skiff when they told him some of that stuff. So it's like, what the heck and DeLong, I highly doubt DeLong was given
No, he said today, he said on the last show he was on that DeLong didn't have a clearance. Good. He mentioned that very recently. Like DeLong had zero access to any clearance anywhere within the government. So that's fact. And
so the only thing DeLong knows is what DeLong was told.
Correct.
And DeLong at this point has become pretty, I don't know, man. It's very strange to me. Like, you have Greer, who basically says, I'm in contact with government sources.
Yeah.
You have DeLong, who says, I'm in contact with government sources. DeLong comes away and says, oh my God, the aliens are going to eat us. And Greer comes away and says, aliens are among us.
Yeah.
Like in a typical space, you would have reporters that have intel sources that basically leak them information to try to push things, a narrative in one direction or the other. And I wonder if something similar is going on with this. I don't know.
Well, I like to think of whatever is going on out there. They're probably in terms of temperament, probably very similar to us. Because I've also heard Lou say that these things, don't be shocked if they're a lot closer than people think. which is why I asked that one of my first questions was about this metaphorical cigarette that he keeps talking about in relation to time. Like, who is smoking this cigarette? And whoever is smoking this cigarette, do they have control over the UFOs and the UAPs? Like, like he always equates it to a cigarette or like a stick of dynamite, which are also two very dangerous things. Like, so like what happens when the person smoking the cigarette is done with the cigarette? They usually just flick it. It's done. It's over. So like, I love this idea. That
you're talking about
this,
God in the universe.
No, there's God in the universe, but
what the universe just flicks it.
No, he just flicks it. He's done with it. No, exactly. Well, and he said like this is what theology's been asking since the beginning of time. But this idea of it's all happening all at the same time everywhere, and this because this idea that original thought is not. Or excuse me, inspiration is not an original thought. So if that is true, that means maybe, Einstein, 5,000 years in the future, gave himself the E equals MC squared equation, like, and it came as inspiration. It didn't come as, hey, Albert, how you doing? Well, what's going on? There's two of me. It's like it's just downloaded. It's there. Every time we hear about inspiration, that's what it sounds like. That's what people feel.
And I think it's so important to recognize that in physics, energy cannot be created or destroyed, and thought is energy. So it's just a recomposition of the energy of the universe. Every thought we have is a recombination of energy that's already existed forever and will always exist based on the laws of physics. Right.
No, man, it's a killer. I mean, damn, dude, I love thinking about shit like this. I love it. Like this is what chats like this are made for. But we're going on almost 2.5 hours, so I'm gonna let's reset the room real quick. Michael, just reintroduce everybody. Tell everybody I got Jamaro because I've got his link here. So Jamaro Thomas is a political analyst and host of Fault Lines on Radio Sputnik in Washington D.C. on 105.5 FM and the YouTube channel by the exact same name. And Jamaro, the chat was lighting up every time you talk, man. Like it is. I melt in your hands, my friend. I seriously want to have a discussion privately, publicly. Doesn't matter to me. I want to have a discussion about early 2000 politics.
No, guys, I enjoy
just
this,
kill it.
I love having to be able to have the conversation about stuff like this. Like usually, it's like straight politics, and it's like you get into the UFO stuff, and it's very specific when you're talking about either on my channel or if I'm on my own channel, it's like very specific to me. So now having UFO Twitter accept me, it feels awesome. So
well, they love
also man. It's nice meeting all of you guys. UFO Joe, I follow you on Twitter also. Alex Sears, thank you. It's nice meeting you, man. And it's nice meeting somebody else in politics on this. Like where it's like this kind of thing. And you're right about Rubio. And it dawned on me. I might have fell into a narrative. Politico was running this thing. It's like Rubio is using UFOs going forward. And I was like, holy shit, maybe Rubio is using UFOs going forward. But you're right. It's like, that's not an issue where you just run out and says, UFOs will put me in office.
Right.
It's more so like, hey, there's something in our skies and so forth. This is a national security issue. But yeah, let's talk about the other stuff that's more important. It's the Hillary Clinton way of doing it. I'm holding a book about UFOs. Yep. It's not the main thing because that's not how you're going to. Yeah, I agree with you. Totally agree with you on that. But no, man, thank you, man. I really appreciate you guys inviting me for this. I feel welcomed.
Oh man, dude, yeah, we love having you here, and I'm glad that we made a nice political connection. You guys are in the same town, So yeah, let's get that conversation going more than once. I think.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's good to meet you, Jamal. Thanks for the kind words, sir.
And if you didn't know who Alex Sears was, Alex is the chief UFO correspondent at The Daily Caller and has researched UAPs for several years. Alex is experienced in the political realm and is very familiar with the inner workings of Washington, D.C.
And then, of course, sorry, go ahead, Alex.
I'm sorry. I do want to echo Jamal's sentiment that thanks for welcoming a political nerd to kind of the UFO community, because I was pretty hesitant going in on kind of sharing my background and what I do for a living, because a lot of people would consider it very polarizing. So I appreciate that I can kind of sidestep that to get to the real bipartisan issue of our time, or maybe even the non-partisan issue of our time, which is UFO disclosure.
Right on.
And if you're
go for it.
Not familiar with the top right corner of this panel. Joe Murgia, also known as UFO Joe, is a friend of the program and has been independently investigating UFO and UAP phenomenon and paranormal research for the past 25 years. UFO Joe, amazing to have you today. We really appreciate you stopping by.
Yeah, guys, it's been great. Enjoyed this a lot, and never thought we'd be as far as we are right now. You know, I when I first got into this in '96 or so, I felt 2000 was the year for disclosure. And then when it didn't happen, I was like, as the years went on, it's like, nothing's happening. And
how did you prepare for? What were you thinking about 2012? Were you thinking something was going to happen in 2012?
I thought 2012 represented a shift. So I thought the years and maybe decade around that there would be some changes, which, you know, we could argue that changes are happening now, but I never thought there was going to be some massive cataclysm, although I do have an interest in cataclysms on this planet, but I didn't think 2012 was going to be it. So I was very happy I didn't tell everybody to prepare for some major cataclysm or disaster.
Yeah.
I know, I was interested in the
Thank God
subject,
you
but
didn't spend $40,000 on a bunker, right?
We're putting together.
Same with what was the computer one?
Y2K.
Y2K is another
Yeah.
one. When I was doing a newsletter back then about UFOs and all this stuff, and I did not tell anybody to buy water, and I was like so happy I didn't.
Yeah, we do. The other show is the Singularity Lab, where we talk about futurism, tech, and science, and that sort of thing. And we're doing a bit about futurists and how wrong they are all the damn time. So that's gonna be super fun over on the Singularity Lab. So make sure you join us for that.
Right. Where's the flying car?
Yeah, exactly. Where's the flying car? Well, I don't know if you guys remember the show Beyond 2000. It was like a early 90s TV show, and it was all the tech. Like, I remember they popped up, GPS was one of the episodes. I go back every once in a while, watch them, and all of those things are wrong. But the GPS one was actually pretty interesting. But how long it took to get the GPS signal, and like, how slow he had to go to make sure that the GPS could catch up with him. But hey, look where we are now, man. Like, everybody, like, if we didn't have that, nobody, except for a few people maybe in this room, know how to use a map. Like, I remember going on family road trips, and I would be the guy with the map. You know, like, all right, we're at exit 46. We got 12 more exits. You know, like, kids don't have no clue.
I kind of
remember MapQuest?
Yes.
What a pain in the ass MapQuest was.
Print out the directions.
Oh my God! All right, well, gentlemen, I really loved all of you being here. I cannot wait to have you all back again. It's been an absolute pleasure, a fun day for this discussion. Miraculous May has not disappointed. It has been absolute bananas, and there's still so much to talk about. So with that said, gentlemen, thank you so very much. We'll see you next time.
Thanks, Lou.
Have a good one, guys.
My pleasure. All righty. All right. So, Michael, that was a killer show, dude. Where's Rather? Rather, get in here. Rather, that was a fun show, right?
Yeah, that was a hell of a show.
Cool, man.
Great panel, great discussion. Elizondo, man. Wow.
Woo! Yeah, we got some good questions in there. The panel, the super chat questions were insane. They were so good. So good.
I was afraid when his wife stepped in that we weren't going to be able to get to that, but I'm really glad that we were.
I thought that question ended the interview. Honestly, because I was like, well, you know, we were talking about Danny Sheehan and sort of the optics of it. I'm like, oh no, what happened? So no, thank God she actually gave us 10 more minutes. So thank you, Miss Elizondo. If it is Miss Elizondo, which I have a feeling it is, she's sort of the point person. But yeah, thank you so much, my lady. That was awesome. Squidding, what do you? Before you go, please tell everybody where they can find you and what you're doing over on your channel.
Yeah, I'm currently researching time crystals, which are an interesting new state of matter, which might have some interesting quantum practical applications. And I'm going to have a video out on my channel, Rather Be Squidding, hopefully Sunday night. So hop over and subscribe and watch that when it comes out.
Right on.
Shit, yeah.
Yeah, hell yeah. That sounds like fun. All right, Rather, we're going to let you go. Have a killer weekend, my dude. Can you keep the music going if I take you out?
Yeah, sure can.
All right, awesome. Awesome.
Later.
Did it, dude. Yeah, sounds good. All right, so Mikey, how do we end the show again? God, so much.
Well, didn't you have some Arizona iced tea that you wanted to?
I've been drinking it all damn show, man. You know. Delicious.
My goodness, what an incredible show. So I just want to
fun, man.
Yeah, I mean, first of all, I couldn't believe how great the chat was today. How many amazing questions. The super chats were great. The regular chat was great. The amount of people who keep showing up for this show to support this show, and night after night, every single day we're here during the week. 7
Crowds
p.m.
get bigger
Eastern.
and bigger every single show. Every show. I mean, tonight we had, I think, about 450 people watching, which was close to our Big Phone Home record. Like, that was real close. So, the crowds are getting bigger. The audience is getting bigger. And if you haven't, subscribe. Ring the bell so you don't miss any of our live streams, which, again, happen every day. I do my show, the Unidentified Celebrity Review, every Monday, Wednesday at 4 p.m. to 6 p.m. And Fridays, we usually go from 1 p.m. to 3 p.m. And then on Thursdays and Tuesdays, we're at the Singularity Lab from 4 to 6. So we are going to be releasing the schedules every week for you guys. But just ring the bell. It's the easiest thing to do. You'll be reminded. It'll remind you every time we go live.
And
so
if you're not
really appreciate that.
subscribed for the Singularity Lab, make sure you click on my Linktree down below in the description. All you got to do is one click, and then it'll take you. It's the first button on that Linktree. Just click that, and it'll automatically subscribe you.
So between these two channels, we give you a show every week. We're always usually talking about the UAP topic, and one way or the other, it always seems to finagle its way in there because the news is crazy. We're getting news every day, you guys. Every day there's stuff to talk about. So we're going to break it down here. We're going to do it every day, and we're going to have fun with it. We're going to take the information seriously, but we don't take ourselves too seriously. So we're glad that you're here. We're glad that you came aboard and got weird with us here on the Unidentified Celebrity Review, your home for credible news, reviews, and commentary on everything UAPs and UFOs. Before we go, I want to say thank you to the sponsor, BlueMarlinChronicles.com, purveyors of the world's finest fishing tackle since 1995. And of course, got to say thank you to DOS Tapes. They provide all of the tunes that you hear on the show. Their Bandcamp link is in the description below. Don't forget to check out my Patreon. It's a great way to support the show if you can't do the super chats and vice versa. Donate however you can because
Do you have the guts?
Do you have the guts? Check out the Patreon to see if you got the guts. And also, the more you support us, guys, the less time I spend in an Uber, the more time I've got to research and book guests like Lue Elizondo, or I think we're going to get Alex Dietrich, fingers crossed. Please, my lady, we'd love to have you on.
I want to speak to that real quick before you wrap it up. If you are not a Patreon subscriber, if you want to give $1, $5, $10, $20, or if you have the guts, make sure you click the link below. If you don't know what Patreon is, it's a way to support the show. You just give a monthly donation. It comes out every month. It's super easy. I had a meeting today with Luis in his car while driving an Uber to prepare for this show. If you don't want to have me have a meeting with Luis in his car where he's breaking up so we can prepare for the show, please support Uber. Not Uber, Patreon.
No, Patreon. Yeah.
Patreon.
All right. Well, with all of that, you guys, we really appreciate all the support and love that you showed us throughout this week. We're hoping you're liking this new tighter format. We're working super hard to make sure that everything looks good, feels good. It's something that you're going to want to share. This is a channel you're going to want to share with your friends that may not be into this topic. So we invite you all to join us on this journey. It's going to be a lot of fun. Don't miss a second of it. With all of that, Michael, have a killer weekend, my man. Great job this week. I want to say thank you to the producer, our producer, Alex in the back, and also Rather Be Squidding for helping us navigate the chats and everything that's going on. With all of that said, you guys, stay safe out there. Peace.